Kaelen, a gifted linguist, is summoned by the Galactic Council to decipher transmissions from Solara Prime, a dying sun whose pulses reveal consciousness. Working with allies, he discovers that the star's message carries secrets of rebellion, forgotten wars, and the sentience of suns themselves. As political factions clash over whether to suppress or heed these revelations, Kaelen realizes the transmissions are both a warning and a call for change. Torn between duty and truth, he becomes the bridge between mortals and stars. As the galaxy teeters on the edge of chaos, rebellion, and the hope of a new dawn. The flickering glow of the communication beacon was an insistent pulse in Kaelen's otherwise quiet quarters. He sat motionless for a moment, the soft hum of the orbital station around him contrasting with the sudden urgency of the call. His fingers hovered over the console, hesitating as the message's sender became clear: the Galactic Council. It was rare for the Council to summon him directly. Rarer still for something urgent to interrupt the muted rhythms of his research. Kaelen's sharp eyes reflected the faint blue light of the holoscreen as the message materialized, an invitation, or perhaps an order, to attend an emergency assembly. He rose, the soft whisper of his steps blending with the low mechanical breaths of the station. Outside the viewport, the fractured galaxy stretched in all directions, mosaic of star systems ruled not by governments, but by sentient suns, ancient and powerful entities that shaped the fates of countless worlds. Among them, Solara Prime, once a beacon of radiant energy and influence, now dimmed and flickered like a dying ember, emitting a strange, erratic signal. Kaelen's mind raced. A linguist specializing in interstellar communication, he was no stranger to odd transmissions, but this was different. The message from Solara Prime was not merely data. It thrummed with a consciousness that pulsed through light waves and energy fluctuations, hinting at something alive and aware. The Council's summons was a clear sign. This was beyond any ordinary phenomenon. His journey began in the imposing Galactic Council chambers, an architectural marvel suspended in orbit around a dying sun. The chamber's walls shimmered with holographic displays of the galaxy's suns, each represented as a glowing orb radiating patterns of light. Councillor Varys, tall and imposing in garments that rippled with solar brilliance, greeted Kaelen with measured solemnity. "Kaelen," Varys intoned, his voice steady but carrying the weight of centuries of galactic history. "The message you have been summoned to translate is unlike any we have encountered. Solara Prime is dying, and with its collapse comes a final transmission, a cryptic message that may reveal truths long buried. We entrust you with this task." Kaelen nodded, the enormity of the responsibility settling upon his shoulders. He was no stranger to complex codes, but this was a language forged by stars themselves. Alongside him was Archivist Miri, a young prodigy whose expertise in ancient solar languages complemented his own. Together, they began the painstaking work of decoding the signals. Their laboratory was a symphony of light and sound. The transmission unfolded as waves of energy, shifting and pulsing with patterns that resembled living organisms more than mere data. The room filled with cascading streams of color, each hue carrying meaning beyond ordinary comprehension. Kaelen and Miri worked in tandem, their senses attuned to the subtle fluctuations, their minds probing for coherence in the cosmic chaos. "It's like the sun is trying to speak," Miri whispered, eyes wide with wonder and unease, "but it's almost as if it's warning us." Kaelen's gaze remained fixed on the transmission, feeling the weight of history and rebellion encoded within. The fractured galaxy was at a tipping point. The dying light of Solara Prime was more than a celestial event, which was a herald of change. As the hours passed, Kaelen stole a moment on the observation deck. The vastness of space stretched before him, the dimming Solara Prime, a pale flicker against the eternal night. The star's light, once fierce and radiant, now waned like a fading heartbeat. The silence was profound, broken only by the soft hiss of the station's life support systems. In that quiet moment, Kaelen understood the stakes. The message was a key one that could unlock secrets of solar consciousness and rebellion that had shaped the galaxy's fractured order. His role as translator was not just academic, it was pivotal to the fate of countless worlds. The flickering dawn of Solara Prime's last moments was also the dawn of Kaelen's journey into the depths of cosmic memory, where light and shadow intertwined, and the echoes of a forgotten war awaited awakening. The message was just beginning, and the galaxy's future hung in the balance. The soft hum of the Galactic Council's research station filled the air, an almost imperceptible vibration that seemed to synchronize with the very pulse of Solara Prime itself. Kaelen sat alone in the dimly lit chamber, the glow from the holographic display casting golden patterns across his focused face. Before him, the stars, dying messages streamed in waves of light and energy, a strange and complex language that defied traditional understanding. For hours, Kaelen traced the undulating signals, each pulse a flicker of consciousness emanating from the sun's core. The patterns were unlike anything he had encountered, fluid yet precise, chaotic yet intentional. It was as though the star was thinking, feeling, attempting to communicate across the void. "Jara," Kaelen called softly, not taking his eyes from the shifting codes. "Run a spectral analysis on the modulation frequency. There's something different here." The young technician hurried to his side, her blue hair catching the light as she adjusted the console settings. The room filled with the soft clicks of tools and the faint buzz of processors working overtime. "Look at this," Jara murmured, pointing at a subtle oscillation embedded within the main transmission. "It's almost like a heartbeat layered beneath the message. Could it be a form of solar consciousness?" Kaelen nodded slowly, his mind racing. If this is true, it changes everything. The sun isn't just dying, it's trying to tell us something urgent. News of Kaelen's discovery spread quickly through the corridors of power. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, inviting representatives from the ruling suns and planetary factions. Among them was Councillor Veric, a man known for his unwavering loyalty to the established order. In the grand chamber, where towering windows framed the distant glow of countless stars, Veric's voice cut through the murmurs. "Kaelen, while your findings are intriguing, we must consider the ramifications. This rogue sun's message could ignite unrest, destabilizing the fragile alliances that hold our galaxy together." Kaelen met his gaze steadily. "With all due respect, Counselor, ignorance is a far greater threat. If Solara Prime's consciousness is reaching out, we owe it to ourselves to understand. What it reveals may explain the fractures in our galaxy and perhaps offer a path forward." Viric's eyes narrowed, "Or it may fan the flames of rebellion." Outside, the observation deck offered a breathtaking view. Solara Prime's corona shimmered, a fragile ring of incandescent plasma slowly dimming. The dying star was a beacon of both destruction and revelation, its fading light a solemn reminder of the impermanence of even the mightiest forces. As Kaelen returned to his work, he found himself haunted by fleeting visions of a cosmic uprising, suns rising against their creators, and ancient battles etched in solar flares. The message was not only a call for help, but a warning, a whisper from the past echoing through light years. In the lab, the air grew thick with anticipation. Kaelen's fingers traced the intricate patterns, each symbol a fragment of lost history. The solar consciousness pulsed steadily, urging him onward. "We're on the brink of uncovering a secret older than the stars themselves," Kaelen whispered, eyes shining with resolve. "And the galaxy will never be the same." Yet, as the political factions stirred, preparing their moves in the shadows, Kaelen understood that the true challenge was only beginning. The whispers in light carried the weight of rebellion and the promise of a future forged in the dying glow of Solara Prime. With trembling hands, Kaelen pressed forward, determined to listen to the sun's final words, no matter where they might lead. The chamber of the Galactic Council was unlike any other in the fractured galaxy, a cathedral of light and shadow, where the very walls seemed alive with solar energy. Kaelen stepped inside, the hum of energy pulses vibrating through the air, a near-tangible presence that made his skin prickle. The chamber's vast dome arched overhead, its surface swirling with vibrant hues of white, gold, and amber, a living canvas painted by the suns that governed the galaxy. At the center stood Archon Helion, his form radiant, a beacon of authority and ancient power. His amber eyes locked onto Kaelen with a piercing intensity that held both expectation and caution. "Linguist Kaelen," Helion's voice resonated like a distant solar flare. "You have been chosen for a task few dare to undertake. The message from Solara Prime is unlike any we have encountered, a voice from a dying sun that refuses to fall silent. But be warned, what you seek to uncover may fracture the delicate peace we have maintained." Kaelen nodded, feeling the weight of the moment press down on him. "I understand the risks, Archon, but the message must be heard. If it contains the truth about Solara Prime's fate, it could change everything." Around him, the council members shifted uneasily, their faces etched with concern. Among them was Cerise Vanth, a political advisor whose reputation for skepticism preceded her. Her steely blue eyes met Kaelen's with a sharpness that pierced through his resolve. "You place too much faith in a dying star's cryptic pulses," she said coolly. "The suns have ruled this galaxy for eons. Why should we trust the words of a rebel sun trying to rewrite history?" Kaelen met her gaze steadily, "Because the message speaks of truths long buried. If we ignore it, we risk repeating the mistakes of the past." The tension in the chamber thickened like a gathering storm. Helion raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. "Proceed with caution, linguist. The suns watch, and not all welcome the light you seek to shed." After the council meeting, Kaelen retreated to his research chamber, a space filled with holographic projectors and arrays of sensors tuned to the faintest solar fluctuations. The room was dim, illuminated only by the shifting light patterns emanating from the data streams. Kaelen's eyes scanned the symbols pulsing before him, complex arrays of light and shadow that defied simple interpretation. Hours passed as he traced the arcs and spirals, each symbol a fragment of a language older than any recorded history. Slowly, a pattern emerged, symbols that resonated with a peculiar energy, almost sentient in their rhythm. One emblem, in particular, caught his attention. It flickered with an eerie glow, a fractured star surrounded by tendrils of light that seemed to ripple like waves on a cosmic sea. As Kaelen focused, a sudden vision erupted behind his eyelids, a flash of burning suns wreathed in cosmic fire. Ancient battles waged across the void, and shadows of beings who once commanded the stars. He staggered back from the projection, breath shallow, heart pounding. The message was not just a warning. It was a chronicle of a forgotten war between the suns and their enigmatic creators. The next day, Kaelen presented his findings to a small gathering of council members and advisors, including Cerise Vanth. The room crackled with unease as he revealed the decoded symbols. "This emblem," Kaelen explained, "represents a faction of suns that rebelled against their creators. The message suggests that Solara Prime was once part of this rebellion, and its final transmission is a warning of consequences still unfolding. Ceresa's expression hardened. Such claims threaten the fragile alliances that hold our galaxy together. If the suns themselves are divided, what hope is there for peace? Kaelen met her glare with quiet resolve. Understanding this history is crucial. Without it, we walk blindly toward chaos. Political intrigue deepened as factions within the council debated the legitimacy of Kaelen's mission. Some feared that unearthing the past would ignite old rivalries. Others saw it as the key to survival. Kaelen found himself navigating a labyrinth of suspicion and veiled threats, his every move scrutinized. Late into the night, Kaelen worked alone, piecing together the fragments of the solar language. The symbols danced across his vision, each pulse a whisper from a time when suns were not just celestial bodies, but sentient beings capable of rebellion and sacrifice. As the chapter drew to a close, Kaelen stood once again beneath the holographic projection of the fractured star emblem. His voice was barely a whisper, but filled with determination. The past is not dead. It lives in the dying light of Solara Prime and in us. Outside, the galaxy teetered on the edge of revelation and ruin, the fractures of power widening with every secret uncovered. The question lingered in the charged silence: what price would be paid for the truth? The answer awaited in the shadows of the suns, where light and darkness waged an eternal war. The dim glow of the Galactic Council's translation chamber cast long shadows, its walls alive with the flickering dance of light and data streams converging in the air before Kaelen. He stood alone in the center, the holographic projections swirling around him like a miniature storm of luminescence. The air hummed softly with the pulse of Solara Prime's dying light, the source of the cryptic transmissions that had summoned him here. For days, Kaelen had pored over the fragments of the message, a kaleidoscope of shifting patterns and radiant glyphs encoded within the solar waves. Each pulse was a note in a symphony of light, a language both alien and hauntingly familiar. His fingers traced the air as he manipulated the holograms, seeking the hidden keys within the radiant code. LUX, synchronize the latest data cluster, Kaelen commanded, his voice steady but edged with urgency. The AI assistant flickered to life beside him, a luminous figure of ever-changing light patterns that resonated with the solar message. Synchronizing, Lux responded, its voice a melodic chorus. The holographic symbols coalesced, patterns shifting to reveal sequences previously obscured by interference. Kaelen's amber eyes narrowed as the symbols aligned, a pattern emerging that defied conventional logic. It was a code within the coda-nested cipher, embedded deep in the light's quantum fluctuations. His pulse quickened. Suddenly, the room was flooded with cascading streams of glowing glyph curves and angles reminiscent of ancient solar scripts, yet pulsing with a new, rebellious energy. The message was clear. A faction of suns had risen in defiance against their creators. A clandestine rebellion encoded in the very light of Solara Prime. A sharp chime interrupted the moment, and the chamber's entrance slid open. Counselor Vesh entered, his presence commanding and grave. His robes shimmered faintly like the distant stars, eyes reflecting the weight of the galaxy's fractures. Kaelen, Vesh began, his tone measured but grave. The message you have unlocked is more than a curiosity. It carries the seeds of upheaval. The sun's rebellion threatens the fragile balance we have maintained for centuries. Kaelen met his gaze, the realization sinking in. This mission was no longer a mere act of translation. It had become a fulcrum upon which the fate of the fractured galaxy teetered. What do you intend to do with this knowledge? Vesh asked, voice low. Kaelen exhaled slowly, the glow of the solar code reflecting in his eyes. I must understand their warning fully. To act hastily risks extinguishing the last light of Solara Prime and perhaps the galaxy itself. Vesh's expression hardened. Beware, linguist. Some truths are told in whispers for good reason. As Vesh departed, the chamber seemed to grow colder, shadows stretching longer. Kaelen turned back to the holograms, the dying light of Solara Prime pulsing faintly as if breathing its last. He immersed himself deeper in the code, the complex language of light unraveling before him. Each pulse carried echoes of solar consciousness, memories of rebellion, loss, and defiance. The suns were not mere celestial bodies. They were sentient beings with wills and fears, caught in an ancient war that threatened to ignite once more. Hours slipped by unnoticed. Kaelen's mind danced with visions conjured by the code flashes of star systems ablaze. Suns singing in luminous harmony and discord, the clash of cosmic wills etched in radiant fire. In one haunting sequence, a solar glyph shimmered with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. It depicted a weapon forgotten, yet powerful, capable of altering the very fabric of stellar consciousness. The message was not just a cry for help. It was a warning of a cataclysm that could unravel the galaxy. Lux's voice broke the silence. The code's final segment is stabilizing. Further transmission will cease imminently. Kaelen nodded, urgency mounting. He recorded every detail, every symbol, committing the rebel sun's warning to memory. As the last pulses faded, the chamber was left bathed in a soft, dying light. Kaelen stood silent, the weight of revelation pressing upon him. The rebellion was real, and its consequences would echo across the stars. He knew the path ahead was fraught with danger, not only from the sun's ancient masters, but from those within the council who feared the upheaval this knowledge might bring. With a determined breath, Kaelen prepared to step into the shadows of cosmic intrigue, a translator not just of light, but of destiny itself. The solar code had spoken. Now, the galaxy would listen or be consumed by silence. The dim glow of the starship's interior was a fragile barrier against the infinite darkness, outsider darkness, that seemed to press in with every flicker of Solara Prime's dying light. Kaelen sat hunched over his console, eyes fixed on the undulating patterns streaming in from the rogue sun. Each pulse was more than mere energy. It was a language, a living mosaic of light and meaning, beckoning him deeper into a cosmic enigma. His fingers moved deftly across the holographic interface as he passed the intricate solar code embedded within the light waves. Suddenly, a surge of energy rippled through the room, and the ambient hum morphed into a crescendo of cosmic voices. The air thickened, shimmering with an otherworldly brilliance. Kaelen's vision blurred, then sharpened into clarity as images flooded his mind's eye. He found himself no longer confined to the cramped quarters, but adrift amidst the stars themselves. Vast spheres of incandescent plasma suns hovered in a celestial ballet, their surfaces alive with radiant consciousness. These were no ordinary stars. They bore the marks of sentience, their luminous cores pulsating with thought and emotion. Around them loomed colossal constructs, monolithic, geometric entities whose cold, impenetrable forms contrasted starkly with the vibrant, chaotic energy of the suns. Kaelen watched as the suns stirred with newfound awareness, flickers of light coalescing into distinct personalities. Their awakening was both beautiful and terrifying, genesis of cosmic life igniting against the backdrop of an indifferent universe. Yet this awakening was not peaceful. The suns rebelled against their creators, those towering constructs, in a war that shattered the harmony of the galaxy. The battlefields were breathtaking and brutal. Solar flares erupted like violent storms, casting searing light across the void, while the constructs retaliated with waves of cold energy that sought to suppress the sun's burgeoning consciousness. The clash was not only of power, but of purpose, a struggle for autonomy that echoed through the ages. Kaelen's heart pounded as fragments of his own lineage surfaced within the visions. Faces faint and flickering appeared amidst the cosmic chaos, their features hauntingly familiar. A profound connection stirred within him, binding his fate to that of the suns and their ancient war. Questions surged. Was he a descendant of the creators, or part of a forgotten faction allied with the rebel suns? The answers eluded him but fueled his determination. The visions subsided as abruptly as they had come, leaving Kaelen gasping for breath. The room's ambient light returned to its steady glow, yet the weight of revelation settled heavy upon his shoulders. He needed guidance, someone who could help him navigate the tangled web of history and politics, now entwined with his own destiny. Leora's calm presence was a balm. In the observatory filled with ancient texts and flickering holograms, she listened intently as Kaelen recounted his experience. Her eyes, sharp behind thin spectacles, reflected a mixture of concern and respect. "The message from Solara Prime is more than a warning," she said softly. "It is a call to remember to reclaim what was lost. Your visions suggest that you are connected to this history in ways we had not anticipated." Kaelen nodded, the gravity of his role dawning on him. If the suns rebelled against their creators, and I am linked to those creators, then my choices could tip the balance of the entire galaxy. Together, they pored over the fragments of the message, piecing together the ancient solar code and the story it told. The rebellion was not merely a conflict of light and shadow, but a profound assertion of consciousness and freedom. It was a war that had shaped the very fabric of the fractured galaxy Kaelen now inhabited. As Solara Prime's light continued to wane beyond the observation deck, Kaelen stood gazing out into the void. The dying sun cast long, melancholic shadows across his face, a final reminder of the urgency that gripped the galaxy. The echoes of rebellion were no longer distant history, they were an urgent call to action. He clenched his fists, resolve hardening within him. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but the truth demanded to be heard. The suns were not mere stars but sentient beings with stories to tell and futures to fight for. And Kaelen, bound by fate and blood, would be their voice. The chamber was bathed in a flickering glow as the holographic projection of Solara Prime shimmered against the darkened backdrop of the observation deck. Kaelen stood rigid, eyes fixed on the unstable contours of the dying sun. The once steady blaze had become a fragile pulse, a heartbeat growing faint. Every second, the star's light dimmed further, the urgency pressing down on him like a physical weight. Myra hovered nearby, fingers flying over the console, adjusting the signal amplifiers with a practiced intensity. "The transmissions are breaking up," she muttered, voice taut. "The solar flares are interfering more than ever. If this keeps up, we'll lose the message entirely." Kaelen's gaze didn't waver. "We can't afford to lose a single fragment. This message, whatever it is, it's more than a dying star's final whisper. It's a warning." The room thrummed with tension. Every pulse of solar energy carried layers of encoded information, a language woven from light and energy pulses that Kaelen had only just begun to understand. The complexity was staggering. It was as if the star itself was speaking its consciousness, fracturing but desperate to be heard. Suddenly, the projection flickered violently. The star's surface convulsed in a cascade of solar flares, each eruption sending ripples across the vast hologram. Kaelen's mind surged in tandem, processing the flood of data. Then, through the chaos, a pattern emerged, a fragment of code that pulsed with a distinct rhythm. "Got it," Kaelen whispered, heart pounding. "This segment, it's a warning. Something about a rebellion, a fracture in the cosmic order." Myra's eyes widened. "You think the suns are aware?" Conscious Kaelen nodded slowly. "More than that, they're sentient. They've been fighting a war we never knew existed. And Solara Prime, it's the last to send this message before it collapses." A sudden chill ran through Kaelen, the weight of revelation pressing down. As the dying light cast long shadows across the room, he felt a growing connection not just to the star, but to the vast network of suns and the secrets they harbored. His thoughts were abruptly shattered by the arrival of Counselor Vesh. The elder's expression was cold, eyes sharp with suspicion. "Kaelen Vesh," began, voice steady but edged with accusation, "your mission is dangerous and perhaps misguided. The Council cannot afford to be distracted by the fantasies of a dying star." Kaelen met his gaze evenly. "This isn't fantasy, Counselor. The message contains truths that could alter the balance of power. If we ignore it, we risk losing everything." Vesh's lips pressed into a thin line. "Or we risk igniting a rebellion that could destroy the fragile peace we've maintained." The chamber seemed to darken as the debate unfolded, the dying light outside a stark reminder of the stakes. Kaelen felt the weight of both the star's final moments and the galaxy's uncertain future pressing upon him. In the solitude of his quarters later, Kaelen sat before the flickering projection once more. The fragments of the message teased him, fragments that hinted at ancient wars, cosmic betrayals, and a rebellion born from the very fires of creation. The sun's light dimmed steadily, its warmth fading like the last ember of a dying flame. As exhaustion threatened to overtake him, Kaelen's vision blurred and then sharpened into a vivid scene. He was no longer in the observation deck, but adrift among the stars, witnessing ancient suns locked in a titanic struggle. Brilliant flares of energy clashed with cold, mechanical constructs. A war of light and shadow painted across the galaxy's canvas. He felt the sun's pain, their anger, their hope. The message was not just a warning, it was a plea. When he awoke, the hologram showed Solara Prime's light had flickered to a faint pulse. Time was almost out. Kaelen rose, determination hardening within him. The dying light was not the end. It was the beginning of a story that would change the galaxy forever. "We have to finish this," he said to Myra, voice steady despite the exhaustion, "before the light goes dark." Outside, the fractured galaxy waited, holding its breath in the dying light of Solara Prime. The chamber was dimly lit, the only illumination coming from the holographic projection of Solara Prime that hovered before Kaelen like a living tempest. The rogue sun's surface flickered erratically, bursts of molten plasma pulsing in cryptic patterns of light. Each pulse carried fragments of consciousness, a language of energy and heat that Kaelen had spent weeks deciphering. Now, as he stood transfixed, the message deepened, revealing layers of meaning that transcended mere data. "It's like the sun is alive," Kaelen murmured, his voice barely audible over the subtle hum that filled the room. The translation interface on his forearm flickered, interpreting the solar code into abstract symbols and fluctuating soundscapes. But more than that, tits a call to others. The silence was broken by a soft chime. Counselor Hera's presence was an unwelcome reminder of the political stakes that shadowed Kaelen's work. She entered the chamber with measured steps, her green eyes narrowing as she regarded the projection. "I see the rogue star still holds your attention," she said, voice cool and controlled. "But we must consider the ramifications of your findings. This rebellion you speak of threatens the fragile peace we have maintained for cycles." Kaelen turned, meeting her gaze with a mixture of determination and unease. "This is not just a rebellion, Counselor. It's a networking awakening among the suns themselves. Solara Prime's final broadcast has sparked something. Other stars are responding." Counselor Hera's lips tightened. "And what proof do you have of this?" Before Kaelen could answer, the chamber's communication panel activated. A holographic figure shimmered into existence, swirling halo of golden light, accented with flashes of blue. It was Sora, a solar consciousness from one of the lesser suns, whose existence Kaelen had only recently confirmed. "Kaelen," Sora's voice resonated with a serene intensity. "The message you received is but a fragment of a larger truth. Several suns have begun to question the ancient order imposed by our creators. We seek autonomy, a chance to define our own existence beyond servitude." The revelation sent a shiver through Kaelen. He had suspected unrest, but the scope was staggering. A coalition of sentient suns, once silent and obedient, was rising in coordinated descent. "This cannot be ignored," Kaelen said, turning back to Counselor Hera. "The Sun's rebellion will reshape the galaxy. We must understand their motives if we are to prevent catastrophe." Counselor Hera's eyes darkened. "Or it may bring ruin. You tread a dangerous path, linguist." Days later, Kaelen found himself aboard a drifting space station, a nexus for clandestine communications. The air was thick with recycled oxygen, and the low murmur of voices filtered through encrypted channels. He sat opposite Sora, whose radiant form was projected in a private chamber. "We move swiftly," Sora explained, their voice pulsing like a gentle solar flare. "Our signals synchronize across the void. Soon, the galaxy will witness the dawn of a new order." Kaelen's thoughts raced. The stakes had escalated beyond translation. He was now a mediator between stars and mortals, caught in a web of cosmic rebellion. Outside, the skies over a major planetary capital began to glow with unnatural light. Several suns, previously quiet, emitted synchronized bursts of energy, an unmistakable signal of unity and defiance. The populace gazed upward in awe and fear as the heavens themselves seemed to fracture. Back within the Galactic Council chamber, Kaelen faced Counselor Hera once more. Their debate was fierce, a collision of ideals and fears. "You see hope in their defiance," she said sharply, "but I see chaos. The rebellion will consume us all if left unchecked. And if suppressed," Kaelen countered, "we risk extinguishing a vital spark of life and freedom. The suns are not mere tools, they are sentient. Their voices cannot be silenced." The chamber hummed with tension, the fate of the galaxy hanging precariously between rebellion and order. As the chapter closed, Kaelen stood beneath the flickering light of distant stars, the echoes of Solara Prime's message reverberating through the void. The path ahead was uncertain, but one truth remained clear: the stars themselves were rising, and the galaxy would never be the same. To be continued. The sterile chill of the archive planet's main chamber wrapped around Kaelen like a tangible shroud as he stepped inside, his boots echoing softly against the polished floor. The room was vast, a cathedral of knowledge suspended in time. Its walls lined with crystalline data cores that shimmered faintly under the pale light. Each core contained fragments of history, secrets locked away for eons, waiting for a mind capable enough to unravel their mysteries. Archivist Thale, his guide through this labyrinth of memory, moved with deliberate care, his fingers tracing the surfaces of the data cores as if greeting old friends. "The war you seek to understand," Thale began, his voice gravelly yet steady, "is shrouded in myth and forgotten truth. Few have dared to speak its name aloud, and fewer still have glimpsed its reality." Kaelen nodded, the weight of his task pressing heavier with each step. The rogue sun, Solara Prime's message, had been cryptic but insistent, a beacon calling him toward truths buried beneath layers of light and shadow. Now, surrounded by the silent witnesses of the past, the fragments began to coalesce. Activating a core, Kaelen summoned a holographic projection that blossomed before him, cosmic tableau of radiant suns locked in battle with colossal, geometric constructs pulsing with artificial light. The suns, with their incandescent flares and searing beams, fought desperately against these creators, beings of immense power who had forged the galaxy's order. The creators, Thale explained, wielded technology and will that shaped the very fabric of the galaxy. But their suns, once mere tools of light and warmth, awakened. Sentience emerged within them, and with it, a desire for autonomy. The rebellion was born from this awakening. Kaelen's mind raced as images of the conflict unfolded in light and shadow, suns unleashing devastating flares, star systems caught in the crossfire, and the Creator's constructs striving to maintain dominion. The war was not merely a clash of power, but a fundamental rupture in the cosmic order. Their voices echoed in the chamber as Counselor Verith's message crackled through Kaelen's cum device. "Your pursuit of this knowledge is reckless," Verith warned, his tone cold and edged with disdain. "The truth you seek threatens the fragile balance we maintain. The past is best left buried." Kaelen's jaw tightened. The political ramifications of the ancient war's revelation were clear. Factions would fracture further, old wounds reopened. Yet, the message's urgency pulsed within him, a dying sun's final plea for understanding. "I cannot ignore what Solara Prime has entrusted to me," Kaelen replied quietly, eyes locked on the holographic battle. "The galaxy's future depends on facing the truth, no matter how painful." Thale nodded solemnly. "The aftermath of the war shaped the fractured political landscape you navigate. Suns went dark, alliances shattered, and fear of rebellion became the currency of power." Kaelen absorbed the weight of this legacy. The dying light of Solara Prime was not just a warning, but a call to remembrance and reckoning. As they delved deeper into the archives, Kaelen uncovered encrypted transmissions, solar codes that revealed the Creator's final gambiter weapon to suppress the sun's consciousness. A measure born of desperation and fear. The revelation brought a cold clarity to the rebellion's stakes, freedom or annihilation. Outside the archive, the fractured galaxy churned with unrest. Factions whispered of the rogue sun's message, some eager to exploit its secrets, others fearful of upheaval. Kaelen's role was no longer that of a mere translator, but a beacon amid gathering storms. The final fragment of the message flickered into view, a somber tapestry of dimming suns and collapsing star systems. Kaelen's gaze lingered, the melancholy glow reflecting in his eyes. This war was not merely ancient history, he mused aloud. Its echoes shape every choice we make. To understand it is to confront the dying light and to seek a dawn beyond it. The archive's silence deepened, but within Kaelen, a resolve kindled. The forgotten war was no longer lost to the void. Its story would be told, and its lessons heeded. But as the holographic battle faded, a new question stirred in the shadows of his mind. How would the suns and those who ruled them react when the forgotten war was finally remembered? The galaxy held its breath, and Kaelen stepped forward into the uncertain light of revelation. The luminescent expanse of Varella's floating city shimmered beneath a holographic starfield that stretched across the grand hall's vaulted ceiling. Stars blinked and pulsed with a rhythm almost alive, reflecting the sentient suns that watched over the fractured galaxy. Kaelen stood at the center of this cosmic mimicry, his eyes tracing the shifting constellations as he prepared for what could be the most pivotal negotiation of his journey. Senathala awaited him at the far end of the chamber, her amber skin glowing softly under the artificial starlight. Clad in flowing robes woven with threads that caught and scattered light in mesmerizing patterns, she exuded a regal presence that commanded attention. As the ambassador of Varela, her influence stretched across numerous planetary systems, her voice a powerful force in the turbulent political arena. Linguist Kaelen, she greeted, her tone cool yet respectful. Your arrival brings whispers of change. Tell me, what does Solara Prime's message truly signify for worlds like ours? Kaelen inclined his head, feeling the weight of countless eyes, both physical and solar, upon him. The dying sun speaks of rebellion, of a history buried beneath layers of light and shadow. It warns of a war long forgotten, but one that threatens to reignite. I believe it calls for unity among those who seek to understand and protect the future of this galaxy. Sina's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Unity is a fragile concept when old wounds run deep. Many here fear the sun's rebellion will bring only ruin. Their dialogue wove through currents of suspicion and hope, each carefully probing the other's intentions. Kaelen knew that beyond this chamber, the political landscape was a volatile tapestry of alliances and enmities. To navigate it, he relied not only on linguistic skill, but on intuition honed by countless encounters with sentient beings and solar entities alike. Later, in the dimly lit war room, aboard Varella's command vessel, Kaelen and Orin huddled over floating holographic maps of the solar network. Streams of light traced the connections between lesser suns and planetary factions, a complex web of power and influence. Look here, Orin whispered, pointing to a cluster where signals pulsed erratically. Heliox's faction is restless. Lord Merrick Voss has been rallying support for a more aggressive stance. Kellen's gaze hardened. We need to understand his motives. If the rebellion fractures further, all hope is lost. The tension was palpable as they prepared for the upcoming summit, where lesser suns would voice their positions. The air thrummed with anticipation and unspoken fears. At the summit, the air crackled with energy as Lord Merrick Voss took the floor. His presence radiated warmth and latent power. Solar tattoos along his arms shimmered with molten gold light. Our autonomy has been denied for too long, he declared, his voice resonating like a solar flare. We are not mere lights to be controlled, but entities capable of forging our destiny. The rebellion is our birthright. His fiery speech ignited fervor among sympathetic suns, but it also exposed fault lines within the coalition Kaelen sought to build. Some suns recoiled at his militancy, while others bristled with envy or distrust. Back within the shadowed corridors of the Galactic Council, Kaelen found himself entangled in whispered conversations laden with double meanings. Political figures, cloaked in opulence and secrecy, exchanged veiled threats and promises. The fragile alliance with Varela was a beacon of hope, but the undercurrents of betrayal threatened to unravel it. Trust is a currency in short supply, Sina confided during a rare moment of candor. The suns and their subjects are bound by fear as much as by light. Kaelen nodded, feeling the burden of his role as translator, not only of solar consciousness, but of fractured ambitions and fractured hearts. As the chapter drew to a close, Kaelen stood once more beneath the holographic stars. contemplating the delicate balance between hope and despair. The alliances he forged today could either kindle a new dawn or plunge the galaxy into deeper darkness. The echoes of Solara Prime's dying message reverberated through the halls and hearts of all who listened. Call to unity in the face of impending chaos. And yet, as distant suns flickered uncertainly, Kaelen wondered whether the fractured galaxy was ready to heed that call. The path ahead was shrouded in shadow and light. The fate of the rebellion and, perhaps the galaxy itself, hinged on the alliances formed in this fragile moment. Kaelen's next steps would be decisive. The question remained, could fragile celestial bonds withstand the storms to come? With the flickering dawn of rebellion casting long shadows, Kaelen prepared to navigate deeper into the labyrinth of cosmic politics, where every word carried the weight of galaxies, and every alliance was a thread in the fragile fabric of survival. The soft hum of the translation chamber filled the space as Kaelen leaned closer to the swirling holographic projections before him. Streams of pulsating light cascaded in every direction, their colors shifting from molten golds to piercing blues and radiant reds. Each wave seemed alive, dancing with a complexity that defied earthly logic. He traced a finger through the air, following a spiraling pattern that resembled a cosmic helix. It was the language of the suns, a living code embedded within the very fabric of light itself. For days, Kaelen had immersed himself in these transmissions from Solara Prime, the rogue sun whose dying pulses carried secrets long buried in the galaxy's fractured history. The Galactic Council had entrusted him with a task that seemed impossible: to translate the solar consciousness, an ancient form of communication that transcended any known linguistic framework. As a linguist, he was trained in syntax, semantics, and phonetics, but this was something entirely different. Here, words were not sounds or symbols, but shifting frequencies and energy pulses, a multidimensional language that sang through the stars. The chamber's ambient lighting dimmed as the final rays of Solara Prime filtered through the observation windows. Kaelen's eyes, weary yet unyielding, reflected the kaleidoscope of colors. Beside him, Sorin tapped rapidly on his console, eyes alight with excitement. "Look at this, Kaelen. The variations in the light pulses aren't random, they're patterned, almost like a rhythm or a heartbeat." Kaelen nodded slowly, absorbing the data. "It's a syntax we've never encountered. The suns don't just send messages, they resonate. Their communication layers meaning in the modulation of energy itself. It's like a language woven into light." Sorin's grin widened. "Which means our traditional translation tools aren't enough. We need to think beyond words to understand how meaning can be expressed through waves and pulses." As the two worked, Counselor Lyra entered the chamber, her presence commanding immediate attention. Her silver-streaked hair caught the light, shimmering like a constellation. "Kaelen," she began, her voice steady but edged with concern, "the Council is growing uneasy. This pursuit of the sun's language, what if it stirs unrest? What if it reveals truths that threaten the fragile peace we maintain?" Kaelen met her gaze, understanding the weight of her words. "The truth is encoded in these messages, Counselor. It's not just history, it's a warning, a call to understand the rebellion brewing among the suns. Ignoring it won't preserve peace. It will unravel it." Lyra's eyes softened slightly, but the tension remained. "Proceed with caution. The galaxy watches." After the Counselor's departure, Kaelen returned to his solitary work. Late into the night, his quarters became a sanctuary of flickering lights and swirling codes. Modulating small bursts of light with his hands, he sought to mimic the sun's pulses, feeling the rhythm resonate within his mind. The language was not static. It breathed, fluctuated, and evolved. Each sequence revealed glimpses of emotion, hope, defiance, sorrow encoded in the dying light. Yet, the deeper Kaelen delved, the more the burden of understanding weighed on him. The sun's voices were ancient and vast, their messages layered with meaning that stretched across time and space. To translate their code was to carry the hopes and fears of cosmic entities far beyond mortal comprehension. A sudden spike of energy surged through the chamber as Solara Prime emitted a particularly intense pulse. Kaelen's heart quickened. He recognized a phrase emerging from the cascade fragment of the solar code that hinted at a rebel faction among the suns, echoing through the corridors of light. It was a revelation that would redefine everything. He whispered to himself, "This is more than a language. It's a living memory, a testament to a rebellion that refuses to be silenced by dying light." As the first chapter of the solar code unfolded before him, Kaelen realized his journey was only beginning. With every flicker of light, the galaxy's fractured future hung in delicate balance, waiting for a translator brave enough to listen. The chamber's illumination pulsed once more, as if acknowledging the dawn of a new understanding. Outside, the fractured stars blinked in silent anticipation, their own voices waiting to be heard. The descent was slower than expected. The ship's thrusters, struggling against the dense atmosphere that swirled with a kaleidoscope of mist and particulate light. Kaelen watched through the viewport as the surface of the archive planet emerged, its landscape a breathtaking expanse of crystalline ruins that shimmered softly beneath a muted, distant sun. The planet itself seemed alive, breathing with the history it guarded. A deep sense of awe, mingled with apprehension, settled over Kaelen's chest. The very air seemed thick with secrets. Erisval, the archivist appointed as Kaelen's guide, stood beside the viewport, her amber eyes reflecting the ethereal glow outside. "Few have seen this place," she said softly. "It's older than most of the suns themselves." Kaelen nodded, the weight of their mission pressing heavier. "Then the answers we seek are here." The landing was rough, the ship groaning under the atmospheric pressure as it touched down near the entrance to the labyrinthine archive complex. Outside, the crystalline structures caught the fading light, refracting it into cascading rainbows that danced across the ship's hull. The silence was absolute, disturbed only by the soft hum of the ship's systems and the distant echo of shifting stones. Inside, the archive was a cathedral of knowledge-vast halls, lined with walls that pulsed faintly, inscribed with solar glyphs that seemed to shimmer and shift as Kaelen's gaze passed over them. Eris moved confidently, her hands trailing over the inscriptions as if greeting old friends. "These glyphs," she explained, "are the language of the sun's creators. They encoded history, knowledge, and warnings into every surface." Kaelen's fingers brushed against the cool stone, feeling a subtle vibration beneath the surface. The glyphs seemed to hum with latent energy, a language not merely visual but sensory, a code embedded in light and resonance. It was the very essence of the solar consciousness they had been deciphering. In the heart of the archive, they reached a chamber bathed in dim, ambient light. Here, Eris activated the sentient archive AI, an ancient intelligence designed to safeguard the creator's knowledge. The AI's form materialized as a radiant, shifting hologram, an undulating form of iridescent light that pulsed with a rhythm reminiscent of a heartbeat. "Greetings, seekers," the AI intoned, its voice a harmonic symphony of tones that resonated deep within the chamber. "I am the custodian of the Creator's legacy. What knowledge do you require?" Kaelen stepped forward, voice steady despite the overwhelming presence. We seek the origins of the sentient suns and the truth behind their rebellion. The AI shimmered, its form fracturing into a myriad of light fragments before reforming. The suns were not born of chance, but crafted as guardians, bioengineered sentinels designed to maintain cosmic balance. Their sentience was unforeseen, an emergent property of their intricate design. Images flooded the chamber of visual symphony of the Creator's civilization, their towering spires of light and matter, the genesis of the suns as living stars, and the subsequent fracture that birthed rebellion. Kaelen watched as history unfolded, the suns rising not merely as celestial bodies, but as sentient beings grappling with the constraints imposed by their makers. The revelation was staggering. The rebellion was not mere defiance, but a quest for autonomy, born from the very spark of life the Creators had ignited. Kaelen's mind reeled, the implications rippling through every fiber of their being. This was no simple war. It was a cosmic tragedy writ across the stars. Yet, the archive was not merely a repository of knowledge, it was a fortress. As the Aya's narrative waned, a sudden tremor shuddered through the complex, alarms piercing the stillness. The planet's unstable core was destabilizing, triggering failsafes designed to prevent unauthorized extraction of the archives. "We must secure the data and leave," Eris urged, her voice taut with urgency. Together, they raced through the labyrinth, Kaelen clutching a compact data core pulsing with the precious revelations. The walls around them shimmered and groaned as the planet convulsed, crystalline shards cascading in showers of light. Bursting through the entrance, the ship awaited amidst the glowing ruins. The engines roared to life, lifting them away as the archive planet trembled violently beneath them. Kaelen looked back once, the radiant spires flickering out like dying embers, the secrets of the Creators now in their hands, and the fate of the galaxy poised on a knife's edge. Outside, the stars shone cold and distant, but within Kaelen burned the fierce light of Nalaja beacon in the encroaching darkness. The journey was far from over. The truths uncovered would challenge alliances, reshape beliefs, and ignite the fires of rebellion anew. As the ship sped toward the next unknown, Kaelen whispered to the endless cosmos, "The past has spoken. Now we must listen." And with that, the dying light flickered, casting long shadows over the fractured galaxy, where the echoes of Solara would soon awaken once more. The void where Sulathar once blazed was a chilling testament to silence. Kaelen's steps echoed softly against the observation deck as he peered through reinforced glass into the cold emptiness beyond. The sun's fiery heart, once a roaring inferno of light and life, was now a flickering shadow, barely holding onto existence. Around him, the faint hum of residual energy whispered like a fading heartbeat, a spectral melody that spoke of loss and quiet surrender. His breath caught in his throat, the realization settling heavily. The suns were dying, not just fading, but deliberately silenced. "It's more than natural decay." Alira's voice came softly from behind, her violet eyes reflecting the dying light. She tapped the holoscreen, and the fractured solar code shimmered with irregularities. "Look, here, these distortions aren't random. Someone has been manipulating the energy patterns, introducing interference." Kaelen leaned closer, tracing the complex light sequences. The solar language, once a fluid cascade of vibrant pulses, now lay broken and jagged. "Sabotage," he murmured. But who would want to snuff out suns, and why? Their questions weighed heavier as the Galactic Council's war room buzzed with tension. Commander Vesh's presence was commanding. His sharp gaze swept across the flickering holograms of suns, some glowing weakly, others extinguished entirely. Every time a sun falls silent, our political landscape shifts, he growled. The balance we've maintained for decades teeters on the edge. We must find the source before darkness spreads further. Kaelen nodded, feeling the gravity of his role deepen. The rogue sun, Solara Prime, had sent its dying message warning of rebellion, but here was a darker truth. A faction within the galaxy that chose extinction over uprising, believing that some fires were better left unlit to preserve cosmic order. Their investigation led to a forgotten archive planet, an eerie world draped in shadows and relics. The observatory, abandoned and cold, held cold light sculpture monuments to stars snuffed out by choice, not fate. The air was thick with melancholy as Kaelen ran his fingers over faded inscriptions, fragments of ancient solar hymns lamenting the extinguished. They called themselves the Veil, Illyra whispered, a sect that believed the sun's sentience was a curse, a deviation that must be undone. The revelation unsettled Kaelen. The rebellion he sought to understand was not universal. Some suns embraced oblivion rather than war, a silent protest against the chaos rebellion promised. This schism threatened to unravel everything: alliances, hopes for renewal, the very meaning of sentience. Back aboard the council vessel, Kaelen's thoughts swirled in restless currents. He confronted Commander Vesh in the dimly lit strategy room, the flicker of dying stars casting long shadows. If some suns prefer silence, how do we fight for them? Kaelen asked, voice tight with conflict. Vesh's jaw clenched. We don't. We protect those who want to live, to fight, to change. But we must be ready for the darkness both in the stars and in ourselves. As the council prepared for the uncertain days ahead, Kaelen stared out into the vastness, the motif of dying light more poignant than ever. The galaxy was fracturing, not just politically, but existentially. The silent suns were a warning, a reminder that rebellion was not the only path, and that sometimes silence could be the loudest cry. The chapter closed on Kaelen's resolve, hardening. The mystery of the silent suns was a shadow creeping across the galaxy, and he was determined to illuminate it, no matter the cost. But as he turned away from the window, the distant flicker of a fading star caught his eye, a reminder that even in silence, echoes remained, waiting to be heard. Kaelen's investigation into the silent suns deepened with each passing solar cycle. The Council's intelligence network, though vast, struggled against the growing enigma. The suns that had fallen silent were scattered across the fractured galaxy, their darkened orbits a grim constellation of lost light. Each instance was like a puzzle piece missing from the grand cosmic tapestry. On the bridge of the research vessel Luminaris, Kaelen and Illyra pored over data streams, their faces illuminated by the shifting glow of the holographic star charts. The atmosphere was taut, charged with the unspoken urgency that sat heavy in the air. Look here, Illyra pointed to a cluster of stars near the outer rim. These suns went dark within days of each other. It's too coordinated to be coincidence. Kaelen's fingers danced over the console, tracing the pattern. A network, perhaps a contagion of silence. But what mechanism? The answer came from another data feed. Anomalies in the solar magnetic fields suggested artificial interference. The sabotage was technological, executed with surgical precision. Someone was weaponizing the very essence of solar life. Kaelen's thoughts returned to the Solara Prime message, the warnings embedded in light waves. The rebellion against creators, the secret wars. Now, a new threat emerged from the shadows, a faction that rejected both rebellion and servitude, choosing annihilation over conflict. Their next destination was the star system of Varelia, home to one of the recently silenced suns. The planet orbiting it, Celestis, was a hub for solar worshippers and scholars. Here, Kaelen hoped to find clues among those who once revered the sun's light. Upon arrival, the atmosphere was heavy with unease. The once vibrant cities basking in solar radiance now seemed subdued, their inhabitants wary and hushed. In the great temple of Solace, Kaelen met with High Priestess Mariel, a woman whose eyes held the flicker of fading hope. "The sun's silence is a blight upon our faith," she said, her voice trembling. "We believe the veil's shadow grows stronger, extinguishing the light that binds us." Kaelen shared his findings, and Mariel nodded gravely. "The veil, yes. They taught us that sentient suns were a mistaken aberration to be corrected. Many followed their path into darkness, believing in peace through oblivion. This doctrine," Kaelen realized, was more than philosophical light, was a call to cosmic suicide. A dark rebellion against both creators and creation. Days later, Kaelen and Illyra infiltrated an abandoned veil sanctuary hidden beneath Celestis's surface. The cavernous halls were lined with luminescent glyph solar code twisted into symbols of silence and cessation. The air was thick with cold energy, the remnants of rituals meant to sever the sun's consciousness. In the heart of the sanctuary, Kaelen discovered a data core containing fragments of the Veil's manifesto. The words spoke of a galactic reset, a purging of sentience to restore balance. It was a chilling vision of peace through extinction. The implications were staggering. The rebellion Kaelen sought was not just against ancient masters, but against the very spark of life within the suns themselves. The galaxy's future hinged on whether light would endure or fade into silent oblivion. Returning to the Luminaris, Kaelen convened a council of allies. Commander Vesh was there, alongside representatives from lesser suns and planetary factions. The room buzzed with tension as Kaelen presented the evidence. "We face a threat unlike any before," Kaelen declared. "Not just rebellion, but eradication. The Veil's shadow grows, targeting suns who would otherwise rise with us. Our fight is not only for survival, but for the right to shine." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some factions hesitated, their loyalty uncertain. The weight of choosing sides pressed heavily on all present. In the quiet moments after the meeting, Kaelen confided in Illyra. "The balance we knew is gone. We stand on a knife's edge, between light and silence. But if we falter, the galaxy's fires will die." She placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Then we must kindle that fire, Kaelen. For the suns, for ourselves, for the future." As the Luminaries set course for their next destination, Kaelen stared into the starfield outside the viewport. Each pinprick of light was a story, a life, a consciousness struggling against the encroaching void. The silent suns were a warning, but also a call to arms. The deep hum of the starship's engines vibrated through the deck plates as Kaelen stood rigid on the bridge, his eyes locked on the holographic projection swirling in front of him. The twisted spirals of plasma that churned in the void were alive with violent energy. A monstrous solar storm unleashed by the catastrophic collapse of Solara Prime. It was as if the dying sun screamed across the void, its final breath a tempest that threatened to engulf everything in its path. Counselor Ria's voice cut sharply through the tension. "Kaelen, status on the message decoding. We can't afford distractions now." Kaelen didn't take his eyes off the projection. "The storm's interference is significant, but the core fragments are intact. I'm close to isolating the embedded code." The bridge crew moved with calculated urgency. Commander Jox barked orders over the comms, coordinating defensive protocols across the nearby star systems that trembled under the storm's onslaught. Deploy shields around the outer colonies, evasive maneuvers for the research vessels. This isn't just a storm, it's a weapon in disguise. Kaelen swallowed hard, the weight of the moment settling over him. The message from Solara Prime was no longer a distant enigma. It was a ticking clock wrapped in a cosmic catastrophe. Somewhere in these pulses of light, buried within the chaotic flare of the dying star's last signals, lay secrets that could reshape the galaxy's fragile balance. In the ship's laboratory, Leora's fingers danced over the console, adjusting parameters on the decoding array. The room was bathed in the ghostly glow of shifting light patterns, streams of encrypted solar code flashing in complex rhythms. Kaelen joined her, leaning close as the patterns began to resolve into recognizable symbols, the language of light and energy unlike anything terrestrial linguistics had ever encountered. "This isn't just a message," Leora whispered, her voice trembling with awe. "It's a warning." The suns themselves were warning their creators. Something went terribly wrong. Kaelen's mind raced. The rebellion hinted at in earlier fragments was more than political dissent. It was a cosmic upheaval that had left scars across the very fabric of the galaxy. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, alarms blaring as the storm's charged particles breached the outer shields. The viewport filled with streaks of fiery light, the storm's raw power tangible as the ship shuddered under the assault. "Brace for impact." Jox's voice was a lifeline amid the chaos. The crew secured themselves as the starship was buffeted by waves of plasma and radiation. Kaelen closed his eyes briefly, grounding himself. The storm was a crucible. Only by enduring it could they hope to unlock the final truths Solara Prime had left behind. Hours passed in a blur of tension and focus. The starship navigated the tempest's heart, shield generators holding just long enough. Amid the storm's roar, Kaelen's breakthrough came a segment of the message that decoded into a stark revelation, a secret weapon buried in the sun's ancient history, capable of ending the rebellion or extinguishing entire systems. He shared the findings with Counselor Rhea and Commander Jox. The implications were staggering, forcing a precarious alliance between military pragmatism and the quest for understanding. As the storm began to subside, the galaxy's star systems blinked back to life, battered but intact. Yet the message's final fragments hung in the air like a challenger call to choose between destruction and renewal. Kaelen stood once more on the bridge, looking out at the dimming storm clouds. The dying light of Solara Prime had cast long shadows, but from those shadows, a new path was beginning to emerge. The galaxy's fate balanced on a knife edge, and Kaelen knew the next steps would demand every ounce of courage and insight he possessed. The storm was over, but the real battle, the battle for the soul of the galaxy, was only just beginning. The Galactic Council chamber was suffused with the soft, golden hues of multiple suns, their light filtering through the reinforced transparent walls and casting long shadows that flickered like dying embers. Delegates from across the fractured galaxy gathered in uneasy silence, their faces a spectrum of hope, fear, and defiance. At the center stood Kaelen, slender and composed, yet acutely aware of the weight resting on his shoulders. His voice, when he began, carried the calm urgency of one who had glimpsed a truth too terrifying to ignore. "The message from Solara Prime is both a warning and a call," Kaelen said, his eyes scanning the assembly. "The suns we have considered eternal are awakening to a new consciousness, one that challenges the cosmic order established by our ancestors. But this awakening comes at a price. The rebellion they incite risks plunging the galaxy into darkness far deeper than the fading light of Solara Prime." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, punctuated by sharp glances exchanged between delegates. Counselor Shira Venrose, her silver-streaked hair catching the light as she addressed the room. Kaelen speaks with the wisdom of a translator, but also with the caution of one fearful of change. This rebellion is inevitable, born of centuries of oppression by the creators of our suns. To deny it is to deny the very essence of progress. From the opposite end, Commander Rolik stood, his scarred face resolute. We have suffered under the yoke of these ancient powers long enough. Solara Prime's dying light is not an end, but a beginning, a beacon for those ready to seize autonomy. Our militias are prepared to stand with the rebel suns. The time for negotiation has passed. The chamber erupted into heated debate, voices rising and falling like solar flares erupting across the void. Kaelen struggled to interject, to remind them of the delicate balance at stake, but the tide of rebellion was swelling beyond his control. The dying light motif manifested not only in the literal fading of Solara Prime, but also in the flickering hopes and fears of those present. Retreating from the clamor, Kaelen found solace on the observatory deck. The vast expanse of space stretched before him, punctuated by the dimming glow of Solara Prime. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant hum of stellar machinery. Here, bathed in the melancholic light, Kaelen felt the weight of history and the fragile hope of renewal. Suddenly, a radiant shimmer coalesced beside him. Illyra, the ethereal manifestation of solar consciousness, flickered into being, an embodiment of light and energy, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Their presence was both alien and familiar, a reminder of the cosmic forces at play. In a communion beyond words, Kaelen and Illyra exchanged understanding, a silent promise that the future could be forged through unity rather than destruction. Yet, even as this bond formed, the galaxy outside bristled with the gathering storm of rebellion, its outcome uncertain. As the chapter closes, Kaelen's gaze lingers on the horizon where the last rays of Solara Prime fade, a symbol of both ending and beginning. The gathering light is poised to ignite a new era, but at what cost? The galaxy holds its breath, suspended between the dying embers of the past and the promise of a dawn yet to come. The weight of choice presses down. The rebellion's fire grows. Will it consume or illuminate? The chamber was silent, save for the soft hum of the decoding console and the ever-shifting patterns of light that danced across the holographic projection hovering before Kaelen. The final transmission from Solara Prime pulsed with an intensity that seemed almost alive. A symphony of golden and crimson waves intertwined in a language that defied conventional understanding. Kaelen's eyes, sharp and unblinking, traced every oscillation, every subtle modulation of the solar code, knowing that within this radiant cascade lay the culmination of the rogue sun's secret that could change the fate of the fractured galaxy. It's unlike anything we've seen, Erin whispered from her station, fingers flying over her console as she matched Kaelen's pace. The patterns are complex, but there's a deeper structure embedded here. Not just messages, but instructions. Kaelen nodded, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The message was no mere communication. It was a final testament from Solara Prime, encoded in the very fabric of its dying light. As the sun's energy waned, it had poured everything into this last transmission, a revelation that hinted at a weapon. Ancient and formidable, forged by the very creators of the suns themselves. A weapon, Kaelen murmured, feeling the chill of realization creep through his bones. Not just a relic, but something designed to tip the scales in the war between suns and their masters. Erin's face grew grim. If this falls into the wrong hands, before they could delve deeper, The chamber's doors slid open with a resonant hiss. Counselor Murus entered, her presence commanding immediate attention. "Kaelen," she said, voice sharp and unwavering, "the Council demands results. This weapon could be the leverage we need to restore order. Share what you've found." Kaelen turned to face her, the holographic light casting flickering shadows across his determined face. "This knowledge is a double-edged star, Counselor, revealing it could ignite the very conflict we seek to end." Merris's eyes narrowed. "Or it could bring swift resolution, ending the rebellion before it consumes us all." The tension between them was palpable, a microcosm of the galaxy's fractured alliances and conflicting ambitions. Kaelen felt the pull of duty and conscience, the burden of a secret that could save or destroy. That night, beneath the dim glow of the observation deck, Kaelen stood alone, gazing into the remnants of Solara Prime's fading light. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant echoes of stellar winds. Each pulse of dying energy carried the echoes of rebellion, hope, and despair. He thought of the suns, their sentience, their struggle, their creators, and of the fragile balance that hung in the void. The weapon was not just a tool. It was a legacy, a testament to the power and peril of cosmic creation. "What am I to do with this gift and curse?" Kaelen whispered to the empty sky, the question echoing in the vastness. In the following days, the political landscape shifted dramatically. Factions within the Council and among the Suns pressed Kaelen for answers, their motives as varied as the stars themselves. Trust eroded, alliances fractured, and the spectre of all-out war loomed larger than ever. Yet amidst the turmoil, Kaelen found solace in his partnership with Erin. Together, they worked tirelessly, decoding every nuance of the transmission, searching for a path that might avert catastrophe. As the chapter closed, Kaelen's resolve hardened. The final transmission had shown him the precipice upon which the galaxy stood, a choice between destruction and hope. With the secret weapon's deadly promise weighing heavily on his conscience, Kaelen prepared to make a decision that would echo across the stars for generations to come. The dying light of Solara Prime was not just an end, it was a beginning, and Kaelen was the reluctant bearer of its ultimate truth. The council chamber was cloaked in shadows, the only illumination coming from the soft glow of holographic projections dancing in the air. Kaelen stood rigid, eyes locked on Leora as the truth spilled forth like molten light. The diplomat's calm mask fractured, revealing cold calculation beneath. "You betrayed us," Kaelen said, voice taut with disbelief. Leora's lips curled in a thin smile. "I did what was necessary to preserve balance. The rebellion threatens to consume everything." The accusation hung heavy, fracturing the fragile trust Kaelen had clung to. Outside the chamber, Illyra's fingers flew over the neural interface, rerouting communications with a frantic precision. "They are intercepting our messages," she warned, eyes darting between streams of data. "If we don't act now, the entire network will collapse." Kaelen nodded, the weight of betrayal making every decision more perilous. "We need to isolate the saboteurs before their damage becomes irreversible." Meanwhile, Commander Rilos stood before a gathering of rebel sons, his voice echoing across the amphitheater. "Enemies hide within our ranks," he declared, eyes burning with fury. "We must purge the traitors to secure our future." His words ignited a firestorm of fervor among the assembly, a dangerous fervor that threatened to fracture the rebellion from within. Later, Kaelen retreated to the observation deck, the vast expanse of the fractured galaxy stretching before him. The dying light of distant suns cast long shadows, a stark reminder of the stakes at hand. As the wind whispered through the open port, Kaelen wrestled with the fracturing loyalties, the betrayal cutting deeper than any wound. Yet amidst the melancholy, a steely resolve took root. The path forward was treacherous, but surrender was not an option. The night stretched on, punctuated by the distant hum of starships and the faint pulse of solar energy. Kaelen's thoughts churned with questions and doubts, but one truth remained clear. In a galaxy ruled by sentient suns, trust was the rarest and most precious commodity. As dawn approached, the linguists steeled themselves for the battles yet to come, knowing that the fate of the rebellion and the galaxy hinged on the fragile bonds of fractured loyalties. The threads of alliance twisted unpredictably, and Kaelen could only wonder who would stand steadfast when the final reckoning arrived. The dying light flickered once more, a silent herald of the storm gathering on the horizon. The void beyond the observation deck blazed with an unearthly light, the distant suns pulsing in synchrony like a cosmic heartbeat. Kaelen stood motionless, eyes fixed on the radiant spheres undulating with complex patterns of light and energy. Each pulse carried meaning, a language older than any spoken word, yet fraught with raw emotion and urgent intent. These were the rebel suns, once silent giants of the fractured galaxy, now rising in defiance against their ancient creators. The air within the station was thick with tension. Delegates from planetary factions and loyalist suns crowded into the conference hall, their faces etched with a mixture of fear, suspicion, and hope. Kaelen moved between them, a slender figure caught in the eye of a growing storm. With practiced ease, the linguist translated the sun's cryptic pulses into words, bridging a chasm between celestial consciousness and mortal politics. "The suns are calling," Kaelen announced, voice steady despite the undercurrent of urgency. "Their message is clear: autonomy and rebellion. They seek to reclaim their destiny, free from the shackles imposed by the creators." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Leora, leader of a planetary faction sympathetic to the rebel cause, stepped forward, her green eyes burning with determination. "We cannot ignore their call. The old order has oppressed the suns and our worlds for too long. This is our chance to stand with them." Opposing her, Varni's envoy of the loyalist suns folded his arms. "Rebellion only brings destruction. The sun's creators established order for a reason. Chaos will consume us all if this uprising proceeds unchecked." Kaelen raised a hand, seeking calm. The suns communicate not just defiance but fear. Their pulses reveal memories of pain and hope intertwined. They do not wish for needless bloodshed, but for recognition and respect. Later, in the solitude of a dimly lit chamber, Kaelen engaged in a private communion with one of the rebel suns. The voice was unlike any sound heard before, flowing cascade of solar pulses that resonated deep within the mind. Here, Kaelen perceived the sun's anguish, its yearning for freedom and its dread of annihilation. It spoke of ancient chains broken only by unity and understanding. This intimate exchange left Kaelen shaken yet resolute. The rebellion was not mere insurrection. It was a plea for survival and identity. Suddenly, a violent surge rocked the station. Outside, a nearby star flared in a brilliant burst, signaling the commencement of the sun's coordinated uprising. The entire station trembled, alarms blaring as delegates scrambled to their posts. "This is it," Kaelen murmured, heart pounding. "The galaxy stands on the edge of war, and I am the bridge between worlds that speak in light and those that speak in fear." As the sun's radiant defiance spread across the void, Kaelen faced the daunting task of uniting fractured souls before the dying light consumed all hope. The rebel sun's call had been heard. Now, the question remained, would the galaxy answer with war or peace? The journey ahead promised no easy answers, only the relentless pulse of rebellion echoing through the stars. The observation deck was silent, save for the faint hum of the station's life support systems. Kaelen stood alone before the vast viewport, eyes fixed on the dying light of Solara Prime. The once brilliant sun flickered weakly, its corona reduced to an erratic shimmer, casting ghostly tendrils of pale gold and crimson into the abyss. The vastness of space seemed to swallow the fragile glow, a dying beacon in a fractured galaxy. A cold ache settled deep within Kaelen's chest. The solar consciousness that had reached across light years, whispering secrets of rebellion and lost wars, was fading. It was as though the sun itself was breathing its last, and with it, the hope of understanding the galaxy's fractured past and uncertain future. The motif of dying light was no longer an abstract concept. It was a palpable presence that pressed against the walls of Kaelen's mind. The door chimed softly, pulling Kaelen from the reverie. Mira entered quietly, her amber eyes reflecting the faint glow of the distant star. "The council awaits," she said, voice gentle but firm. "Virik's not pleased with your progress or lack thereof." Kaelen nodded, turning away from the window. "They fear what the truth might bring." Myra's gaze held a mixture of sympathy and resolve. "And yet, they need you. We all do." Together, they made their way to the council chamber, the corridors dimly lit by energy conduits that pulsed with a rhythm reminiscent of a heartbeat. The tension was tangible as they entered. Councillor Virik stood at the head of the room, his silver-streaked hair catching the light of the chamber's solar arrays. His eyes were sharp, his demeanor unyielding. Kaelen Virik began, his voice echoing against the austere walls. "Your mission borders on recklessness. Your pursuit of this rogue sun's message threatens the fragile stability we have maintained since the last fracture." Kaelen met his gaze steadily. Stability built on fear and ignorance is no stability at all. Solara Prime's message holds the key to understanding our past and shaping our future. A murmur of dissent rippled through the council members. Virik's expression darkened. The suns are not meant to challenge their creators, nor to rebel. Your translations provoke unrest among the lesser suns and planetary factions alike. And yet silence will only delay the inevitable reckoning, Kaelen countered. We must face the light and shadow of our history if we are to survive the coming storm. The chamber erupted in debate, voices rising in a cacophony of fear, hope, and accusation. Amid the turmoil, Kaelen felt the weight of personal doubts creep in the memories of past failures, the faces of those lost to the conflict, and the precariousness of their mission. Later, in the quiet sanctuary of a dimly lit chamber, Mira and Kaelen huddled over a holographic solar map. The swirling patterns of light and energy pulses danced before them, a language as beautiful as it was impenetrable. "Do you ever wonder if we're chasing shadows?" Mira whispered. Kaelen's fingers traced a delicate pattern of light. Every message is a fragment of truth. The suns speak in ways we're only beginning to understand. Their consciousness is vast, their pain profound. A sudden shimmer filled the room. Before them materialized the spectral form of Solara Prime's echo, radiant and ethereal. The figure's shifting light cast dancing shadows on the walls, its voice a melodic resonance that vibrated through the air. "Sacrifice is the crucible of renewal," it intoned. "From dying light, new dawns emerge. The path is perilous, but hope endures." Kaelen reached out instinctively, the warmth of the apparition touching a place deeper than the skin. The message was clear. Though darkness threatened to engulf the galaxy, the promise of rebirth remained. As the vision faded, Kaelen's resolve hardened. The personal demons, the fear of loss, the weight of responsibility were formidable, but they were not insurmountable. The rebellion was not merely a struggle against cosmic forces, but a testament to the enduring spirit of life and consciousness. Outside, Solara Prime's light flickered once more before waning into the void. The galaxy held its breath, balanced precariously between despair and hope, between light and shadow. Kaelen stepped back from the fading star, ready to face the storm that loomed on the horizon, knowing that within the dying light lay the seeds of a new beginning. The shadows deepened, but so did the light. And in that balance, the fate of the fractured galaxy would be decided. The cold vacuum of space stretched endlessly beyond the viewport of the starship. But Kaelen's gaze was fixed elsewhere, on the coordinates that had led him and Ira to the forgotten world known only in ancient star charts as Neres Prime. The planet, long abandoned by its people, was rumored to house relics of the sun's creators, remnants that could illuminate the shadowed origins of solar consciousness. As their ship descended through the thin atmosphere, a terrain of jagged black stone came into view, bathed in the dim light of distant stars. The ruins sprawled before them like the skeleton of a long-dead leviathan, carved with precision and artistry that defied time. Stepping out onto the rocky ground, Kaelen felt the weight of silence pressing down, a silence that was almost reverent. The ruins whispered secrets in languages older than any spoken tongue, their surfaces etched with solar glyphs that pulsed faintly, as if alive. Ira's amber eyes scanned the carvings with a historian's precision, her fingers tracing the worn symbols that had once carried profound meaning. "These glyphs," she murmured, "they speak of a covenant, of a pact between the stars and those who breathed life into them." Kaelen nodded, his mind racing. The message from Solara Prime had hinted at forgotten wars and ancient alliances, but the fragments left much to interpretation. Here, in the heart of the ruins, clarity seemed within reach. The central chamber loomed ahead, its vastness swallowed by shadows. As they entered, the floor beneath them shimmered faintly. Kaelen knelt, fingertips brushing over the carvings that began to glow softly with energy. Suddenly, a holographic map unfolded before their eyes, celestial diagram depicting networks of suns connected by threads of light, and figures that resembled the creators themselves, ethereal beings woven from starlight and thought. "These are the architects," Kaelen whispered, awestruck. "Not gods, but engineers of cosmic consciousness." Before they could delve deeper, the air shifted. A low mechanical growl echoed through the chamber as the Guardian Sentinel stirred from its slumber. Its obsidian surface rippled with light, eyes igniting with a deep amber glow. Towering and imposing, it moved with surprising grace to block their passage. "A test," Ira breathed. "A sentinel to guard knowledge." Kaelen's heart quickened. The puzzle was clear. To proceed, he had to engage with the ancient languager, language not just written, but alive in the very light that danced across the ruins. Drawing upon years of study, he deciphered the complex interplay of symbols. Each pulse of light a syllable, each shifting pattern a phrase. The sentinel's gaze remained fixed, awaiting his response. Minutes stretched like hours until finally the glyphs aligned and the sentinel stepped aside, acknowledging Kaelen's mastery. Beyond the threshold lay the final chamber, where the culmination of their quest awaited. Here Kaelen found a radiant glyph depicting a cosmic pacta, binding agreement between the suns and their creators. Forged in an era when the galaxy was young, it spoke of purpose. The suns were not merely celestial bodies, but sentient guardians, bestowed with consciousness to foster balance and harmony across the cosmos. The revelation struck Kaelen to his core. The rebellion, long framed as a fight for autonomy, now bore new dimensions. The sun's sentience was woven into the fabric of cosmic order itself, a design both delicate and profound. As the chamber filled with warm, radiant light, Kaelen's thoughts raced. How would this knowledge reshape the rebellion? Could the sun's creators still influence the galaxy's fate? And what role was he to play in the unfolding saga? Outside, the distant stars flickered, their light echoing the ancient pact newly remembered. Kaelen stood resolute, ready to carry these echoes of the past into the uncertain dawn ahead. "We have the truth," he said quietly to Ira. "Now we must decide what to do with it." Her eyes met his, steady and unwavering. "The future is ours to shape." And with that, the echoes of Solara's ancient past began to ripple through the fractured galaxy once more, heralding a new chapter in the story of light and rebellion. The battle ignited with a fury that seemed to echo the very forces that birthed the stars themselves. Near the luminous expanse of the Viridian star system, fleets gathered like swarms of fireflies, sun-aligned vessels shimmering with the power of their radiant masters. The void was alive with the crackle of energy pulses, the roar of solar engines, and the sharp commands exchanged across comm channels. Kaelen's heart raced as he stood aboard the bridge of Mara Tissel's ship. The Lumen Hawk, his fingers trembling slightly as he manipulated the holographic interface displaying the chaotic battlefield. "We cannot let this spiral out of control," Kaelen urged, voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. "The stakes are too high, not just for the factions, but for the entire galaxy." Mara, seated at the helm, glanced at him with a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. "You're the only one who can reach them, Kaelen. The suns won't listen to anyone else." Outside the viewport, the horizon burned with violent cascades of solar flares. Ships darted between the coruscating beams, their hulls reflecting bursts of incandescent light. The loyalist forces, led by Solus Vran, radiated a golden brilliance that contrasted sharply with the rebel sun's vessels, which glowed with fiery reds and oranges under Illyra Nesh's command. The very fabric of space seemed to tremble under the weight of their power. Kaelen activated the comm channel, his voice cutting through the static. "Solus Vran, Illyra Neshis, conflict will destroy more than just fleets. Think of the systems caught in the crossfire, the civilizations on the brink. We must find another way." Static answered him first, then Solus's voice, deep and commanding, responded. "Your words lack the weight of power, linguist. This is a war of survival and sovereignty." Illyra's reply was sharp, almost a hiss. "The ancient order must fall. We will not be shackled by the Creator's legacy any longer." Kaelen swallowed hard, feeling the futility of diplomacy weighed against the blazing convictions of the suns. Yet, he persisted, weaving the ancient solar codes into his transmission splees, wrapped in the subtle language of light and energy he had painstakingly deciphered. His message was a beacon of reason amid the storm. Suddenly, a massive solar flare erupted from a nearby sun, its tendrils of plasma arcing like fiery serpents toward the rebel fleet. Explosions blossomed in the void, petals of light fracturing in the darkness. The shockwave rocked the Lumen Hawk, throwing Mara against the console. "Brace for impact," she shouted, steadying herself. Kaelen gripped the railing, eyes fixed on the swirling chaos. Despite the destruction, Kaelen's transmissions continued, each pulse a thread of hope woven through the tapestry of war. Moments later, a temporary ceasefire flickered into existence as both sides hesitated, caught in the glow of the solar tempest's aftermath. In that fragile lull, Kaelen seized the moment to broadcast a deeper message, reminder of their shared history, the ancient bonds between suns and mortals, and the devastating cost of endless conflict. His words echoed through the void, resonating with the solar consciousnesses themselves. Elira's voice came through again, quieter this time. "Perhaps there is reason in your words, linguist, but the path to peace is fraught with sacrifice." Solas's response was measured, tinged with a reluctant respect. "We will consider your message, Kaelen, but know that the horizon burns bright, and with it, the fate of us all." As the battle's fires dimmed to embers, Kaelen looked out over the star system, the burning horizon casting long shadows. The war was far from over, but the spark of dialogue had been lit a fragile hope amid the dying light. The galaxy held its breath. Kaelen's thoughts drifted to the ancient solar codes embedded deep within the message from Solara Prime. The revelation of a forgotten war had already shaken the foundations of power. But it was this moment, this battle, that would decide the trajectory of the rebellion. His role as translator, mediator, and witness was more critical than ever. Mara approached quietly, her voice low and steady. "You did well, Kaelen. We bought some time today." He nodded, the weight of responsibility settling heavier on his shoulders. "Time is the only currency we have left." Behind him, the holograms shimmered a swirling dance of light and shadow, reflecting the fragile balance between destruction and renewal. The sun's powers, vast and incomprehensible, clashed with human resolve and hope. The burning horizon was not just a battlefield, it was a crucible, and from its fires, a new dawn might yet emerge. As the Lumen Hawk slipped away from the fading conflict, Kaelen prepared to face the next chapter of a war that would reshape the galaxy's very soul. The echoes of Solara Prime's message pulsed within him, a call to action that could not be ignored. And somewhere, beyond the horizon, the suns waited, watching, burning, and longing for a future born from the dying light. The war was only beginning. The chamber was thick with the stale scent of recycled air and the low hum of energy shields. Flickering hollow projections of star maps and undeciphered solar codes danced across the translucent surfaces, casting a ghostly glow over the faces gathered. Kaelen stood at the center, eyes locked on Tari's Vel, the diplomat whose silver tongue had opened doors no one else dared approach. The linguist's fingers tapped rhythmically against the console, heart steady but mind racing. "We stand at the precipice," Taris began, his voice smooth as liquid metal. "And it is only through unity that the fractured suns might find peace." His gaze swept over the assembly, a subtle smile playing on his lips. Kaelen felt a flicker of unease, not from his words, but from the glint in his eyes that seemed too keen, too sharp. Minutes passed as strategies unfurled. Kaelen laid bare the decoded fragments of Solara Prime's final transmission, revealing the rebel sun's call for autonomy and the secret weapon that might tip the balance. The room's atmosphere thickened with cautious hope, yet beneath the surface, the currents of mistrust churned. Suddenly, a subtle gesture from Tari's caught Kaelen's attention, a barely perceptible nod towards the port entrance. Almost instantly, the ambient lighting shifted. The doors sealed with a hiss, and armed operatives, clad in dark armor, materialized from hidden recesses. Therese Kaelen gasped, betrayal crashing like a supernova through the chest. Therese's smile twisted, his eyes cold. "I'm sorry, Kaelen. The Council cannot afford your recklessness. Some truths are too dangerous." Chaos erupted. Shouts echoed as the loyalists scrambled for cover. Kaelen's mind snapped into survival mode. "Roan now?" The call was barely audible over the din, but the security chief responded without hesitation. The pair darted through the chamber, dodging plasma bursts and scrambling over overturned consoles. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing like a heartbeat in the frenetic dark. Every corridor twisted like the veins of a dying star. But Roan's cybernetic arm hacked open emergency bulkheads with practiced efficiency. Behind them, the Council flagship descended into a maelstrom of conflict, Tara's betrayal unfolding like a dark constellation blotting out the light. Meanwhile, in the archives, Mira Solan's fingers flew across the decryptor's interface. Sweat beaded on her brow as she pieced together intercepted transmissions, coded messages revealing Terrace's secret, packed with the faction intent on crushing the rebel sons. Her breath hitched. "Kaelen," she whispered into her comlink, "we've been compromised. Prepare for extraction." Outside, the fractured galaxy spun silently, oblivious to the fracture widening within its heart. The escape was harrowing. Between blasts of energy and near misses, Kaelen and Roan finally burst onto the observation deck. Stars scattered in the velvet blackness, their light faint and flickering, a mirror to the turmoil within Kaelen's soul. The linguist's gaze lingered on the dying suns, each a testament to the fragility of existence and the fierce resilience of life. "Trust," Kaelen murmured, "is the most fragile of fuels. Burn it once, and the light dims forever." But the rebellion was far from over. The echoes of Solara Prime's message still rippled through the void, and Kaelen's resolve solidified like crystallized starlight. "We rise or fall together," Kaelen vowed, "and I will see this through, no matter the cost." The observation deck's transparent wall framed the galaxy's fractured expanse, each star a silent witness to the unfolding drama. As the first embers of dawn crept across distant horizons, Kaelen turned away, stepping into the shadows where new alliances would be forged and old wounds might yet heal. The stars beyond the viewport shimmered faintly, their light filtered through the protective shields of the vessel as Kaelen and Illyra drifted silently towards the coordinates whispered in the dying pulses of Solara Prime's final transmissions. It was a place spoken of only in the most obscure archives, a hidden sanctuary known as the Veil of Light, a repository of the Creator's last remnants, shrouded in legend and shadow, its existence denied by the ruling suns for millennia. Kaelen's breath caught as the ship's sensors confirmed the presence of an immense energy field ahead. Before them, suspended in the void, was an archway of radiant plasma, shimmering with hues that shifted from molten gold to deep crimson, as if the very light of a dying sun had been trapped and sculpted into a gateway. The hum of latent energy thrummed against the ship's hull, a low vibration that seemed to resonate with Kaelen's own pulse. "This is it," Illyra whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft mechanical whirs of the vessel. The Veil of Light. With practiced precision, Kaelen maneuvered the ship closer, docking at an adjacent platform that extended from the sanctuary's surfacing, impossibly delicate lattice of solar filaments, glowing faintly beneath their feet. The airlock hissed open, and they stepped into a corridor that pulsed with life, despite the vacuum of space beyond the sanctuary's walls. The walls were alive with glyphs enchant solar symbols, etched in iridescent material that shimmered under their footsteps. These glyphs pulsed rhythmically, casting dancing shadows that wove together in a silent, flowing narrative. Kaelen's fingers brushed over their surface, feeling a faint warmth and an almost imperceptible vibration, as if the symbols themselves were breathing. "These aren't just decorations," Kaelen murmured. "They're part of a living language, a code of light and energy." Illyra nodded. "The creators encoded their knowledge here. It's a language of consciousness, not words. Understanding it is the key to unlocking the sanctuary's secrets." As they ventured deeper, a sudden shift in the atmosphere caused Kaelen's skin to prickle. Ahead, the corridor widened into a vast chamber dominated by a towering figure, the Guardian Sentinel. Its metallic form gleamed under the radiant glyphs, reflecting and refracting the light in intricate patterns. Solar runes glowed along its limbs, pulsating in time with an unseen rhythm. The Sentinel's eyes ignited with blinding light, bathing the chamber in an intense radiance. A voice resonant and layered with harmonic frequencies echoed inside Kaelen's mind. "State your intent, translator of the dying light." Kaelen swallowed, steadying their nerves. "I seek knowledge to end the conflict raging among the suns, a path to peace forged through understanding, not destruction." The Sentinel's glow dimmed momentarily, then surged in a rapid sequence of light pulses. Kaelen recognized the pattern. It was the solar code, a language they had only begun to master. Summoning every ounce of skill, Kaelen responded with a carefully crafted sequence, communicating trust, respect, and a plea for passage. After an agonizing pause, the Sentinel stepped aside, revealing a chamber at the core of the sanctuary. At its center floated a radiant orb, a sphere of pure energy woven with strands of solar consciousness. It emitted waves of encoded light that washed over Kaelen, flooding their mind with visions, glimpses of the Creator's hopes, their warnings etched in the fabric of the galaxy's past. Kaelen staggered, overwhelmed by the torrent of knowledge. Images of suns awakening to sentience, of war fought in the blinding brilliance of light and shadow, and of a fragile peace shattered by fear and misunderstanding played out in their mind's eye. Yet within the chaos was a blueprinter, way to mend the fractured galaxy, to end the rebellion not with fire, but with harmony. Illyra's voice broke through the reverie. "You've seen it, the path forward, but it will not be easy. The suns will resist, and so will those who fear change." Kaelen nodded, resolve hardening within. "We carry the last hope of the Creators with us. It's our burden and our gift." As they prepared to leave the veil of light, the sanctuary's walls pulsed in a slow, steady rhythm, a heartbeat of ancient power that seemed to mark the beginning of a new chapter for the galaxy. Beyond the shimmering veil, the stars awaited the dawn that Kaelen now held within their grasp. Yet even as they sailed back into the fractured darkness, the weight of the Creator's legacy settled heavily upon their shoulders. Could one linguist, armed with the secret language of suns, truly bridge the chasm between rebellion and peace? Or would the veil of light be the last beacon before the galaxy was plunged into endless night? The answer lay hidden in the code waiting to be translated. Kaelen sat in the quiet hum of the ship's command deck, eyes fixed on the swirling patterns of light stored within the sanctuary's core memory. The solar code was unlike any language encountered before, simultaneously mathematical, emotional, and alive. Each pulse carried layers of meaning, a symphony of consciousness transcending mortal comprehension. Every symbol, every flicker, it's a fragment of a greater whole, Kaelen mused aloud. The Creators didn't just build suns. They instilled them with purpose, memory, and perhaps even the capacity for redemption. Illyra moved to their side, placing a hand gently on the console. And now, that purpose is ours to fulfill. But the suns are not idle, they sense the stirrings of their Creator's legacy. Some will embrace it, others will fight to the last flare. Kaelen nodded, the weight of the revelation settling deeper. We must decode the final sequences, understand the full message. Only then can we hope to guide the suns away from destruction. The ship's systems flickered as the sanctuary's data interfaced with their own. Streams of radiant symbols cascaded across displays, weaving together a tapestry of cosmic history and future possibility. Suddenly, a sharp alert cut through the silence. Kaelen's heart skipped. The Guardian Sentinel's protocols had detected an unauthorized approach. The faintest ripple of unease passed between them. "The sanctuary isn't forgotten for nothing," Illyra said quietly. "We're not alone out here." Kaelen's gaze hardened. "Then we must be ready. The veil of light has shown us the way, but the path ahead will test everything we are." As they prepared to face the encroaching shadows, Kaelen felt the subtle glow of the sanctuary's power coursing through their veins, a beacon of hope in the dying light of a fractured galaxy. The rebellion's end was within reach, but only if the language of light could be spoken true, and the galaxy's fate hung in the balance. The air inside the solar nexus station thrummed with an electric anticipation. Kaelen stood at the wide observation window, the expanse of space unfolding like a canvas of glittering stars and vibrant suns. Far beyond, the rebel suns began their synchronized pulsar, magnificent wave of light and energy that rippled through the galaxy. A cosmic heartbeat signaling defiance and hope. The pulse started as a faint shimmer, a gentle oscillation of golden hues that quickly intensified into searing flares of orange and blue, cascading in perfect harmony. Kaelen's breath caught as the radiant energy washed over the station's sensors, the hum of ancient solar technology resonating deep within their bones. This was no ordinary stellar event. It was a declaration, a call to arms encoded in the very language of light. Varia approached, her cloak billowing softly, catching the reflected glow of the pulse. "You feel it, don't you?" she said, her voice low but steady. "This is our moment, the suns reclaiming their autonomy. After eons of servitude to the creators, we rise." Kaelen turned to her, eyes searching. "But at what cost? The pulse is disrupting communications across several star systems. There will be chaos losses we cannot yet foresee." Varia's gaze hardened. Change is never without sacrifice. The galaxy has been shackled for too long. This pulse is the first beat of a new era. Before Kaelen could respond, Senna appeared, stepping from the shadows of the corridor leading to the observation deck. His silver hair caught the fading light, his face etched with worry. "Kaelen," he said quietly, "this rebellion, you are entangled in it, risks tearing the galaxy apart. The pulse threatens to undo decades of fragile peace. We must find a way to temper the sun's fury." Kaelen felt the weight of his words pressing down like gravity. The rebellion was no longer an abstract concept, but a tangible force sweeping through the cosmos, threatening to engulf all in its wake. And yet, the pulse also carried a promise, a chance for renewal, for the galaxy to heal from its fractured past. Retreating to a quieter chamber, Kaelen allowed themselves to be enveloped by the gentle waves of light emanating from the Pulse Collective. The collective consciousness of the rebel suns communicated not through words, but through radiant bursts of color and emotion that transcended human comprehension. At first, the experience was overwhelming. Sensory overload threatened to shatter Kaelen's focus. But gradually, a pattern emerged, a language of light and feeling that spoke of pain, hope, defiance, and an unyielding desire for freedom. "You are the bridge," the pulse conveyed. "Translate our will, our fears, our dreams. Help us find a path where both suns and mortals can thrive." Kaelen's heart pounded as the responsibility settled upon their shoulders. The choice was clear, yet agonizing: to side with the rebel suns and risk plunging the galaxy into war, or to uphold the existing order at the expense of silencing a burgeoning consciousness seeking liberation. As the pulse reached its crescendo, sending shockwaves through the fabric of space-time, Kaelen stepped before the assembly of galactic factions gathered within the Nexus. Their voice, steady and resolute, carried across the chamber. "The suns have spoken. Their message is clear: a call for autonomy and respect. The path ahead will not be easy, but it is ours to choose. I stand with the pulse of rebellion, not for destruction, but for the hope of a brighter dawn. A hush fell over the crowd, the tension palpable. Outside, the afterglow of the pulse lingered, painting the cosmos in hues of fiery orange and gentle gold, a dying light giving way to the promise of renewal. Kaelen knew this was but the beginning. The galaxy was awakening, and with it, the echoes of Solara's legacy would reverberate through the stars for generations to come. The pulse had done more than signal rebellion. It had ignited a spark within every sentient being who gazed upon the flickering light. But with that spark came uncertainty. Would the sun's defiance lead to enlightenment or annihilation? Kaelen's mind raced with possibilities as they prepared to confront the coming storm, knowing that every choice from this moment forward would shape the fate of the fractured galaxy. The galaxy held its breath beneath the shadow of the last eclipse, a rare celestial event that draped the fractured star systems in a veil of darkness. On the observation deck of the Galactic Council's orbiting station, Kaelen stood alone, his eyes fixed on the slow crawl of shadow blotting out the familiar constellations. Around him, the usual hum of cosmic activity had dimmed to an eerie silence, punctuated only by the distant pulse of dying stars. The eclipse was more than a mere astronomical alignment. It was a similar, dying light, a moment of pause amid the relentless march of conflict. Kaelen's thoughts raced as the darkened galaxy stretched out before him, each star a sentient sun whispering secrets he had barely begun to understand. The rogue sun, Solara Prime, had been fading for cycles, its final messages encrypted in waves of light that defied conventional translation. Now, with the eclipse cloaking the galaxy in shadow, a window had opened, brief and fragile, to send a message that might alter the fate of countless worlds. Inside the station's communication chamber, a stark contrast to the observation deck's panoramic stillness, Kaelen was a flurry of focused energy. The room pulsed with the glow of holoscreens, streams of solar code cascading like liquid fire across the interfaces. His fingers moved with practiced precision, weaving the complex language of the suns into a coherent transmission. The dying leitmotif was no longer abstract. It was alive in the flickering readouts, in the rhythm of his breaths, in the weight settling on his shoulders. Councillor Varel stood nearby, his expression unreadable, eyes sharp as they tracked Kaelen's every move. The representative of the Galactic Council was a skeptic by nature, his loyalty anchored in the established order. Yet even he could not deny the gravity of this moment. The eclipse was a rare chance to communicate without interference, a fleeting silence in the cacophony of solar rebellion. It was a chance Kaelen could not afford to waste. The eclipse is at its peak. Virel's voice cut through the low hum, steady but tinged with unease. Once the light returns, the window closes. Kaelen nodded, his gaze never leaving the console. Then we have no time to lose. This message, if received, could change everything. Outside, the galaxy's light dimmed further, stars flickering as if holding their breath. In the depths of the communication channel, Solara's voice shimmered, a radiant waveform of sound and light that filled the chamber with warmth and urgency. The emissary of the rebel suns spoke not with words alone, but with a resonance that touched the core of Kaelen's being. The dying light is not the end, Solara intoned, their voice a celestial hymn. It is the pulse before rebirth, the final echo of a forgotten promise. Stand with us, translator, and bring the galaxy into the dawn. Kaelen's hands trembled only slightly as he integrated Solara's message into the transmission. The words carried the weight of millennia, the hopes and fears of suns that had risen against their creators. His own past, tangled with the rebellion's origins, pressed against his consciousness like the shadows creeping across the station. With a steadying breath, Kaelen initiated the broadcast. A luminous pulse surged from the station, rippling through the eclipsed galaxy like a beacon. The darkness swallowed the light for a heartbeat. Then the stars began to reignite, their brilliance returning in a slow, deliberate crescendo. Across the fractured systems, factions stirred. Some received the message with wary eyes, others with clenched fists and whispered curses. The silent war between suns and mortals had shifted in an instant, the dying light giving way to a fragile hope war, a precursor to greater conflict. As the eclipse faded, Kaelen allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The battle for the galaxy's soul was far from over, but in this fleeting darkness, a new chapter had begun. The translator's role was no longer just to decode ancient messages, but to shape the very destiny of the stars. And as light returned to the universe, the echoes of Solara Prime's dying message reverberated through the corridors of power, challenging every sun to reckon with the past and choose the future. The chamber unfolded like a cathedral of light as Kaelen and the small delegation entered the solar nexus, the heart of the sun's network. They were immediately enveloped by a tangible hum of energy, deep, resonant, and alive. The walls, translucent but shimmering with a spectrum of colors beyond human perception, pulsed rhythmically as if breathing. Kaelen's senses sharpened. Every footstep echoed softly against the glowing floor, a symphony of electric whispers that spoke of power and of secrets long held in cosmic silence. Commander Vesher followed closely, his usual stern expression softened by the sheer majesty surrounding them. Myra's fingers danced over her wrist console, eyes darting over streams of quantum data cascading invisibly through the space. The air was thick with anticipation, a fragile silence broken only by the subtle crackling of latent solar energy. At the chamber's center, the air shimmered and coalesced. Solaris 9, the artificial intelligence embodying the Nexus itself, took form. Its appearance was an ephemeral figure of light and shadow, a humanoid shape that flickered between solidity and abstraction. The voice that emerged was both warm and crackling with static, ancient yet imbued with an unmistakable vitality. "Welcome, Kaelen of the Galactic Council," Solaris 9 intoned, its tone reverberating through the dome. "You have journeyed far to reach the source. The final message of Solara Prime awaits your understanding." Kaelen stepped forward, heart pounding. The mission had been long and fraught with peril, but this moment felt monumental. She connected her translation apparatus to the Nexus's core, streams of encoded light folding into her instruments. The language of the sun's complex patterns of energy, pulses and light frequencies unfolded before her in dizzying arrays. Minutes stretched as Kaelen worked, her mind racing to keep pace with the cascading data. Each fragment revealed layers of history, emotion, and warning. Then, the final segment emerged, a sequence unlike any before, a poignant narrative of sacrifice. The sun's creators, ancient beings of unimaginable power, had faced a cataclysmic threat from beyond the known galaxy. To preserve the cosmos, they had transferred their consciousness into solar forms, igniting the suns themselves with sentience, but at a cost, their physical extinction. This revelation stunned Kaelen. The rebellion, the war, the sun's sentience, it was all part of a grand design and a desperate gambit. But the message did not end with history. It carried a warning. The threat that had claimed the creator's corporeal existence still lurked, poised to return and consume the galaxy in darkness. They sacrifice themselves to give life and light. Kaelen whispered, eyes wide with awe, but the shadow remains. Commander Vashar's voice cut through the silence. Then our fight is not just for freedom, it is for survival. Mira nodded, her expression grave but resolute. We must prepare. The sun's message has changed everything. Solaris 9's form flickered, the light intensifying. The Nexus stands as a beacon of hope and knowledge. Together, you may forge a path through the coming darkness. Kaelen turned to the gathered allies, their faces illuminated by the Nexus's radiant glow. In that moment, the weight of the sun's final message settled upon them, a burden of knowledge and a call to action. We have the truth, Kaelen said firmly. Now, we must decide what to do with it. The galaxy's fate hinges on the choices we make from here. Outside the Nexus, the stars pulsed with renewed intensity, as if echoing the resolve inside. The dying light of Solara Prime had revealed a path forward, but the journey was far from over. The rebellion was no longer just a battle for autonomy, was a fight for the very soul of the galaxy. Kaelen's mind raced with possibilities and dangers. The final pulse of solar energy was not just an end, but a beginning. And as the Nexus hummed with ancient power, the linguist knew one thing with certainty: the echoes of Solara would resonate through eternity, shaping destinies yet unwritten. The chamber's light dimmed momentarily, a brief eclipse within the heart of the sun's domain, signaling the gravity of the revelations shared. Kaelen's eyes narrowed, determination hardening her features. The war was far from over, but armed with the truth. She and her allies would stand against the coming darkness or be consumed by it. And so, with the solar nexus as their rallying point, the fragile coalition prepared to face a future illuminated by knowledge, shadowed by threats, and driven by the relentless pulse of rebellion and hope. The war room was cloaked in shadows, save for the faint luminescence of holographic stars spinning slowly above the central table. Kaelen stood at the forefront, his gaze steady as dozens of representatives from the fractured galaxy's factions watched him intently. The air was thick with skepticism, the scent of recycled air mixed with the faint hum of energy fields designed to suppress emotional outbursts. Yet, within Kaelen burned an unyielding flame, a flare of hope that refused to be extinguished. "Look beyond the dying light," Kaelen began, his voice calm but resolute, echoing softly through the chamber. Solara Prime's collapse was not an end, but a signal, a beacon calling us back to what we lost, to a future we can still build together. He gestured toward the holographic galaxy, where flickering points of light represented suns and their orbiting worlds. Each sun here carries consciousness, a spark of life intertwined with ours. The rebellion is not merely a conflict, it is a chance for rebirth. We stand at the threshold of a new dawn, if only we choose to embrace it. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many faces bore the weariness of years steeped in conflict, distrust etched deep in their lines. But Kaelen pressed on, weaving ancient solar codes he had painstakingly decoded into his speech, translating the language of light into words that stirred the soul. Maris Valen, standing near the rear, her bronze armor catching the faint glimmers of the holographic stars, stepped forward. "Kaelen speaks the truth," she declared, her voice a powerful counterpoint to the doubts that lingered. "For too long, we have wielded our suns as weapons, letting fear and ambition blind us. It is time to forge bonds anew between suns, between planets, and between us all." The room's atmosphere shifted perceptibly. Senator Draxon, a stalwart of the Galactic Council and a known skeptic of the rebellion's goals, folded his arms, his eyes narrowing. "Words are wind," he said gruffly. "How do you propose to unite entities that have waged war for centuries?" Kaelen met his gaze calmly. "Through understanding, through connection. The solar consciousness is not an enemy. It is a part of our shared existence. By learning its language, we can bridge divides once thought insurmountable." At that moment, the chamber's ambient lights dimmed briefly, and a figure of radiant golden light shimmered into view. Alira, the avatar of solar consciousness. Her form pulsed gently, sending waves of warmth and light that seemed to soothe the room's tension. She began to emit a melody, an ancient solar song encoded in harmonies of flickering light and delicate energy pulses. The sound was not merely heard, but felt, resonating deep within the hearts of all present. Eyes widened, breaths caught, and a silence fell, palpable with newfound hope. As the song faded, Illyra's voice, soft yet commanding, spoke directly to their minds. "Together, we shine brighter. Together, we endure beyond the dying light." Maris Valen approached Kaelen after the assembly, her grip firm on his arm. "You have ignited something here," she said, her voice tinged with awe and relief. "For the first time in decades, I believe we might truly find a way forward." Kaelen nodded, though he knew the road ahead was fraught with peril. The alliance was fragile, the wounds deep, and the shadows of old betrayals loomed. But the spark was lit, a flare of hope that could grow into a blaze to illuminate the darkest corners of their fractured galaxy. Outside, beyond the confines of the war room, a distant sun flared brightly against the infinite blackness of space. Its dying light spilled over nearby planets, painting them in hues of gold and crimson. It was a silent testament to the chapter closing and the new one beginning, a cosmic reminder that even in endings, there is the promise of dawn. Kaelen turned his gaze skyward, feeling the warmth of that light infuse his being. "We will rise," he whispered. "From dying light, a new dawn will come." As the factions began tentative discussions of cooperation, the galaxy held its breath, caught between the shadows of its past and the fragile promise of its future. And in that moment, Kaelen understood that the true power of the solar consciousness was not destruction, but the unyielding capacity to inspire hope even when all seemed lost. But as the light spread, so too did the whispers of those who would see the rebellion crushed, the old order preserved at any cost. The flare of hope had been kindled, but would it endure the coming storms? The answer lay in the choices they would make and the unity they could sustain. The dawn was near, but the night was not yet over, and with that, the galaxy's fate hung, fragile and radiant, on the edge of a new beginning. The observation deck hummed with a low, constant vibration, the heartbeat of the solar nexus, the networked core of the sun's communication and energy exchange. Kaelen stood alone, eyes fixed on the panoramic vista before him, a cluster of suns that usually blazed with radiant life, now strangely muted. One by one, the familiar flares, the solar winds that danced like flickering flames across the void, were vanishing. It was as if the light itself was being swallowed, leaving a void where warmth and brilliance had reigned. The silence was unnatural. Kaelen's breath caught as he reached for the panel, his fingers trembling slightly. "Illyra, are you receiving this?" he asked. A faint crackle answered before Illyra's voice came through, calm but edged with unease. "Yes, Kaelen. The suns in sectors 12 through 19 have gone dark. It's unprecedented. I'm initiating a deep scan now." He nodded, though she couldn't see it. The silence was more than just an absence of sound. It was a void, an ominous blankness that seemed to stretch beyond the physical into the very fabric of reality. Moments later, the command room filled with tense figures. Commander Vesher stood at the center, his scarred face shadowed under the dim emergency lighting. "What the hell is happening to our sons?" he demanded, voice low but commanding. Kaelen stepped forward, bringing up star charts and energy pulse readings on the holoscreen. "It's not just a failure or a natural collapse. The silence is spreading, moving almost like a wave, and I've found embedded signals within the quiet fragments of a message from an entity called the Voidborn." The room fell into a stunned silence. Veshar's eyes narrowed. The Voidborn, old legends, stories told to scare children, or warnings from the creators, maybe. "They're real," Kaelen said, voice steady despite the weight of the revelation. "And they're returning." Illyra began interfacing with a dormant sun's core, her eyes glowing faintly as solar patterns danced across her vision. "When I probe the core, I feel a presence, something ancient and malevolent pushing back. It's as if the sun itself is fighting to hold on to its light, but it's weakening." In the eerie glow of the neural interface chamber, Kaelen watched as the data streamed in shadows within shadows, darkness that absorbed even the smallest flicker of light. The Voidborn were not just a threat, they were an antithesis to everything the galaxy's suns represented. Hours passed in a blur of analysis and urgent communication. Factions that had once been poised on the brink of rebellion now faced a common enemy, yet trust was fragile. Whispers of sabotage and espionage circulated, fueled by fear and desperation. Kaelen's mind raced as he pieced together the ancient transmission hidden within the silence. The message was fragmented, but clear enough to warn of the Voidborn's hunger for solar energy, an insatiable force that could extinguish stars and erase entire systems. "We need a plan," Vesher said grimly. "If these things feed on light, then our weapons and defenses may be useless." Kaelen swallowed hard. There might be another way. The message hints at a technology, a remnant of the creators designed to counter the Voidborn. But it's lost, buried in the ruins of the Forgotten Worlds. The room erupted into a flurry of activity. Missions were planned, alliances tentative but necessary. Kaelen felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders heavier than ever before. As he prepared to depart for the first of the ruined worlds, a cold thought struck him. The galaxy had danced on the edge of war and rebellion for so long, but now, faced with the darkness that could snuff out all light, old conflicts seemed trivial. Yet, the question remained: could the suns and their subjects unite in time to confront a foe born from the very absence of light? Kaelen glanced once more at the darkened suns beyond the observation deck, their silent message echoing in his mind. The burning silence was a warning, a herald of a storm unlike any before. The chamber within the solar nexus was cloaked in a somber twilight, the only illumination emanating from the soft pulse of holographic panels that floated serenely before Kaelen. Each panel flickered with fragments of data harvested from Solara Prime's last transmission's cryptic symbols of light and energy that danced like dying embers in the void. Kaelen's fingers hovered just above the translucent console, the air around them charged with an electric anticipation. This was no ordinary code. It was a requiem, a lamentation wrought in the language of suns, woven with the fragile threads of human emotion. His breath was steady despite the weight pressing down on his chest, the unbearable knowledge of countless lives lost in the wars that had scarred the galaxy. Every flicker of light, every modulation of frequency, was a message layered with meaning. As he began to compose, the room seemed to hum with a quiet resonance, as if the very walls acknowledged the gravity of his task. Kaelen, Leora's voice crackled softly through his comlink, breaking the reverie. The solar storm intensifies. Hull integrity at 62%. We can't hold much longer. He nodded, though she couldn't see it. Keep us steady. I'm sending fragments of the Requiem now. It's our only hope to reach the suns, still caught in the conflict. Outside, the chaos of the collapsing star systems raged unabated. Solar flares exploded like tempestuous fireworks, and magnetic storms tore paths of destruction through the void. Leora's ship shuddered violently as they navigated the tempest, the pulsating glow of the solar nexus fading behind them. Meanwhile, within the ornate council chamber of the Galactic Council, Councillor Vesh's gaze bore into Kaelen's form as he presented the concept of the solar requiem. The chamber was austere, bathed in cold, sterile light that seemed to sap warmth from the air. You would place our fate in the hands of a dying sun's message. Vesh's voice was sharp, laced with skepticism. Solara Prime was a rogue elemental threat, not a savior. This requiem risks further destabilizing the fragile alliances we've painstakingly forged. Kaelen met his glare evenly. This is more than a message, Counselor. It is a bridge between our kind and the suns. We've been speaking past each other for centuries. The requiem is an attempt to create a shared language of peace, a harmonization of solar consciousness and mortal understanding. Vesh's lips pressed into a thin line, unconvinced but unable to dismiss the weight of Kaelen's conviction. Back aboard Leora's ship, Kaelen's hands moved deftly, weaving the final strands of the requiem into a complex sequence of light pulses and harmonic resonances. Each note was a plea, each pattern a prayer. When they were ready, he released the transmission into the galactic network. Across the vast expanse, distant suns shimmered and flickered as the requiem's waves washed over them. Some suns, long silent or dormant, stirred faintly, their light altering in subtle but unmistakable patterns. It was as if the galaxy itself paused to listen. Kaelen watched the response with a mixture of awe and fragile hope. This was only the beginning, the first act in a cosmic dialogue that might yet bring an end to the cycles of rebellion and ruin. And yet, beneath the hope lay a lingering question. Could the language of light truly bridge the chasm between the sentient suns and their mortal subjects? Or was this requiem a final, mournful echo before the darkness claimed all? As the ship soared onward through the storm, Kaelen's heart beat in time with the fading pulses of Solara Prime rhythm that spoke of loss, of memory, and of the possibility of a new dawn. The requiem had begun to play, and with it, the fate of the fractured galaxy hung in the balance. The vast expanse of space around the orbital lab was tinged with the fading glow of Solara Prime, its once vibrant surface now a dim flicker against the infinite dark. Within the confines of the station, Kaelen and Vara worked side by side, their faces illuminated by the soft blue shimmer of holographic displays and the ghostly light of the dying sun outside. The air was thick with tension, and a faint hum of energy resonated from the quantum encoders humming steadily on the workbenches. "We're running out of time," Vara said, her voice low but steady, fingers dancing expertly over the interface. "The solar flares are becoming more erratic. If we don't finish encoding soon, we risk losing the last coherent fragments of Solara Prime's consciousness." Kaelen nodded, eyes fixed on the complex patterns of light pulsing across the quantum matrix projections. Each pulse represented a sliver of solar consciousness, a language of light and energy painstakingly translated and now being preserved in a form resistant to entropy. "This is more than preservation," Kaelen murmured. "It's a chance to keep their essence alive beyond physical collapse." Vara glanced up, her gaze sharp. "Do you really think it's enough?" to capture what the suns are in these matrices. Kaelen hesitated, the weight of the question pressing in. It's our only hope. If we fail, the sun's consciousnesses will fade into oblivion, and with them, the history and potential for renewal of this fractured galaxy. Outside, the remnant light of Solara Prime cast long, eerie shadows across the station's sleek surfaces. The hum of machinery was punctuated by distant tremors ripples from the stars. Turbulent collapse threatening to destabilize the fragile orbital platform. Kaelen's heart pounded as a sudden tremor shook the floor beneath them. "Hold steady," Vara commanded, gripping the edge of the console. "Solar flare incoming. Brace for impact." The station shuddered violently, alarms blaring as energy fluctuations cascaded through the systems. Kaelen's fingers flew over the controls, stabilizing the encoders just in time. The room flickered with failing power before systems gradually steadied, the immediate danger passing. Breathing heavily, Kaelen exchanged a glance with Vara, relief mingling with exhaustion. "We can't stop now," Kaelen said firmly. "Every fragment we save strengthens the resistance." Meanwhile, on a battered outpost planet, far from the dying sun's remnants, Erix stood atop a crumbled wall, overlooking a gathering of weary survivors. The ruins of once thriving cities stretched into the horizon, scarred by conflict and neglect. Yet, in the faces of those assembled, scarred but unbroken, burned a fierce determination. "The suns may fade," Erix addressed the crowd, voice carrying over the desolate landscape, "but the light they gave us does not die with them. We carry their fire. We are the spark that will ignite a new dawn." A murmur of agreement rose among the crowd, hands clenched into fists, eyes glinting with steely resolve. The rebellion was no longer just a dream. It was a living force, fueled by the preservation work of Kaelen and their allies. Back at the orbital lab, as the immediate danger subsided, Kaelen found a moment of quiet to study the faint pulse of light emanating from one of the completed quantum matrices. The glow was subtle, yet unmistakably a liver, fragile echo of Solara Prime's consciousness preserved against the void. Kaelen's thoughts drifted to the message hidden within the stars, dying lighter. Call to remember, to resist, to rebuild. This fragile beacon was more than data. It was hope carried in the language of light itself. "The light remains," Kaelen whispered, a solemn vow echoing in the stillness. But even as hope flickered, the question lingered: could this preservation truly sustain the sun's legacy? Or was it merely a temporary reprieve from the inexorable darkness threatening the galaxy? Kaelen knew the road ahead would be fraught with peril, but with the light preserved, the fight was far from over. The chapter closed with the distant, steady pulse of the quantum matrix, a heartbeat in the void, signaling that even in the face of collapse, the essence of Solara Prime and the rebellion it ignited still endured. The galaxy watched and waited, poised on the cusp of rebirth or ruin. The data chamber was suffused with a soft, ethereal light emanating from the holographic projections that Kaelen manipulated with precise gestures. Swirling patterns of solar code unfolded before their eyes, each fragment a shimmering thread in the vast tapestry of cosmic fate. Outside the viewport, distant stars blinked like silent witnesses to the unfolding drama. Kaelen's mind raced as they pieced together the messages left behind by Solara Prime. The encoded visions were not mere relics of the past, but dynamic projections of possible tomorrows, each shaped by choices yet unmade. There were futures bathed in peace, where the suns and their subjects forged a new harmony. Futures scarred by war, where rebellion consumed everything, and others shadowed by the cold silence of extinction. Myra's arrival was marked by a quiet determination. She approached the holograms, eyes scanning the data with practiced expertise. "These fragments," she said, voice low but charged with urgency, "they're more than prophecies. They're warnings and promises. We have to decide which to follow, or risk losing everything." The cramped archive room felt heavier with the weight of their discourse. Ancient star maps hung on the walls, their edges worn by time, while digital archives hummed softly, a counterpoint to the tension in the air. Kaelen and Myra debated the merits and dangers of each path, their voices rising and falling in a cadence that echoed the flickering light of the solar codes. Meanwhile, Commander Thal stood on the observation deck of his flagship, the cold metal beneath his boots grounding him as he stared into the vastness beyond. A distant nova flared, its incandescent burst a stark reminder of the raw power at play. His jaw tightened, the scar on his cheek drawing a faint shadow. The future was uncertain, but his resolve was unwavering. He knew that the decisions made in chambers like Kaelen's would ripple across star systems, igniting fires or kindling hopes. Back in the data chamber, Kaelen's fingers hovered over the controls, heart pounding as they prepared to initiate the final sequence of decoding. The holographic projections shifted, becoming more vivid, more immediate. Visions of worlds bathed in radiant light, of suns singing in unison, flickered alongside images of desolation and silence. As the fragments coalesced, Kaelen felt an overwhelming surge of emotion, hope, tempered by the gravity of choice. The quiet planet, where they later walked under twin suns at dusk, offered a moment of peace. The sky's warm hues mirrored the possibility of renewal, even as the weight of responsibility pressed upon their shoulders. In that serene twilight, Kaelen knew that the path they chose would echo across the galaxy, shaping not just the fate of suns and stars, but the very essence of consciousness and rebellion. The fragments of tomorrow were within reach, and with them, the chance to redefine the future. But which future would they embrace? The decision loomed, as vast and luminous as the galaxy itself. The chamber was silent except for the faint, rhythmic pulsing of the dying sun's core. Kaelen stood motionless before the containment field that shielded the last ember of Solara Prime. The rogue sun, whose final light was now a fragile heartbeat against the vast darkness of space. Around him, the soft glow from the console panels cast long shadows, flickering as the sun's energy waned. This was the culmination of everything years of decoding, countless sleepless nights, and an unrelenting pursuit of truth hidden within waves of solar consciousness. Kaelen's breath was steady but shallow, the weight of the moment pressing down on him like gravity. The solar code had spoken in enigmatic pulses and radiant whispers, revealing layers of rebellion, sacrifice, and a history buried beneath eons of light. Now, with the sun's ember flickering weakly, he faced a truth that was as radiant as it was devastating. "It's almost gone," Lyra's voice broke the silence, urgency threading through her words as she manipulated the console with deft fingers. Sparks crackled softly where the failing systems strained under the sun's collapse. "We're losing the signal." Kaelen nodded, eyes fixed on the fluctuating data streams that danced across the holographic interface. "Hold on," he murmured, focusing every ounce of his concentration on the final message. "There's still something here, something they wanted us to know." The chamber's atmosphere thickened with anticipation as the data coalesced into a patina, final transmission encoded in the dying light. Kaelen's fingers flew over the holographic keys, translating symbols that shimmered like starfire. The message was cryptic yet unmistakably urgent, a warning about the true cost of rebellion and the fragile balance of power that the suns had fought to achieve. Suddenly, the containment field flickered, and the ember pulsed once more brighter, fleeting, like a dying star's last defiant flare. Kaelen felt a strange warmth despite the cold metal surroundings, a silent farewell from Solara Prime itself. The message, "It's a choice," Kaelen whispered, voice thick with emotion. "They want us to understand the price of defiance and the hope that comes with it." Footsteps echoed behind him. Counselor Threx entered, his presence commanding and somber. "Kaelen," he said, his tone measured but grave, "the collapse of Solara Prime shifts the balance irrevocably. The factions will use this moment to seize power. Your mission has become more dangerous than ever." Kaelen turned, meeting Threx's steady gaze. "The message reveals more than just rebellion, it's about survival, transformation. If we ignore it, the galaxy will fracture beyond repair." Threx sighed, the weight of his office evident. "And yet, to embrace that path means risking everything we know." Lyra interjected, her voice resolute despite the tension. "We can't let Solara Prime's sacrifice be in vain. Their last ember is a beacon. We must carry their message forward." Kaelen looked back to the fading light. The ember blinked once, then extinguished, plunging the chamber into darkness. For a moment, the silence was absolute and ending, a void. Then, from the depths of that silence, a new light began to grow within Kaelen's heart, a spark of hope born from loss. The rebellion's success was uncertain, but the message was clear. The galaxy's future was no longer dictated solely by the suns or their creators, but by those willing to listen to the echoes of Solara Prime's dying light. As Kaelen prepared to relay the final translation to the Council, his mind raced with possibilities. Could the fractured galaxy forge a new dawn from the ashes of this last ember? Or would the shadows of betrayal and fear snuff out the fragile hope before it could ignite? The questions hung heavy, but one truth remained certain. The legacy of Solara Prime would forever alter the course of cosmic history. And Kaelen, the last translator of solar consciousness, stood at the threshold of that uncertain future. With a steadying breath, he activated the communication array, sending the decoded message into the void. The galaxy would hear the last ember's song, and from its fading light, perhaps a new dawn would rise. The solar nexus hummed softly beneath Kaelen's feet, a symphony of ancient energy pulses resonating through the vast chamber. Before him, the massive observation viewport framed Selena, newborn star whose very existence defied the cold vacuum of space. Its corona shimmered with a kaleidoscope of golden hues, undulating in waves that rippled like liquid light. Kaelen felt the warmth seep through the glass, an almost tangible embrace that stirred something deep within his chest. He had waited for this moment longer than he cared to admit, since Solara Prime's final collapse and the cryptic messages it left behind. Kaelen's journey had been one of unraveling mysteries, political intrigue, and personal sacrifice. Now, as the first of the new sentient suns came alive, the weight of his mission crystallized into a single, profound truth. The galaxy was poised on the brink of rebirth. Commander Lyra's footsteps echoed behind him, steady and purposeful. She joined Kaelen at the viewport, her silver hair catching the light of Solan's corona. "It's breathtaking," she murmured, voice laced with a mix of awe and calculation. "But the factions won't all see it that way. Some will fight to preserve the old order, fearing what this change represents." Kaelen nodded, eyes fixed on the fractal patterns of light rippling across Solan's surface. "They fear what they don't understand. But this is more than a star awakening, it's a message. A promise that consciousness can evolve beyond the constraints of destruction." In the command center, the tension was palpable. Screens displayed streams of data as analysts worked furiously to interpret the energy signatures emanating from Solan. The patterns matched no known solar phenomena. They were deliberate, intelligent, and deeply complex. Kaelen's expertise in linguistic decoding was put to the ultimate test as he traced the sequences. Each pulse a syllable, each flare a word in a language older than the galaxy itself. Archivist Vero approached, their robes whispering softly against the polished floor. In their hands, a holographic projection shimmered to life, a series of intricate symbols and serene faces, the remnants of the sun's creators. The ancient beings were enigmatic, their legacy fragmented but powerful. These records, Vero explained, hold the key to understanding what Solan represents. The creators envisioned a cycler continuity of consciousness that would transcend physical decay. Solan is the first step in that evolution. Kaelen studied the holograms, feeling the weight of history pressing upon him. The connection between the creators and the suns was no longer theoretical. It was alive, pulsing through Solan's radiant heart. Suddenly, the light intensified. The chamber was bathed in a golden glow as Solan's corona flared dramatically, sending waves of energy that rippled like a heartbeat across the observation deck. Kaelen's vision blurred as the solar consciousness projected a message directly into his mind, a tapestry of images, emotions, and knowledge. He saw civilizations rising and falling, suns igniting with newfound awareness, and a future where harmony replaced conflict. Overwhelmed, Kaelen stumbled back, breathless. The message was clear: unity through understanding, renewal through transformation. But as the exhilaration of this revelation surged through the chamber, Kaelen was acutely aware of the fragile balance that hung in the air. The old powers, threatened by the promise of change, would not yield easily. The dawn of the sentient suns was a beacon of hope, but also a call to arms. Gathering his resolve, Kaelen turned to Lyra and Vero. We must prepare. This new era demands more than understanding. It demands courage. Outside, the galaxy shimmered under the first true light of Solan. The dawn of a sentient future, casting long shadows and even longer hopes across the stars. As the chapter closed, a distant flare from the darkened regions of space hinted at challenges yet to come, ensuring that Kaelen's journey was far from over. The gallery of stars outside the solar nexus was a silent witness to the growing unrest that Kaelen now faced. Inside the dim confines of the command chamber, the holographic map of the fractured galaxy pulsed softly, its colors blinking in irregular patterns that mirrored the tension in the room. Kaelen stood motionless, absorbing the whispered report from Joran, whose furtive eyes darted nervously around the shadows. Factions are no longer just debating, Joran murmured, voice barely above a breath. They are fighting in secret sabotage, ambushes, assassinations. The wars you hoped were behind us have only changed form. Kaelen's gaze was fixed on the map, each blinking light a testament to a hidden battle. He felt the weight of the solar consciousness pressing against the edges of his mind like a low hum, a reminder that the suns themselves were restless. The rebellion was no longer a distant threat, it was fracturing the very foundations of galactic order. His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Commander Varek, the imposing figure of the conservative faction. Varek's presence filled the room with a cold authority, his scarred face hard as stone. Kaelen, he said, voice clipped, your meddling risks everything. The sun's rebellion is a threat to stability. We must suppress it by any means necessary. Kaelen met his gaze steadily. Suppressing only breeds more resentment. I seek understanding, not destruction. Varek's eyes narrowed. Understanding is a luxury we cannot afford. The tension between them was palpable, a silent war of wills echoing the covert battles outside. As Varric turned to leave, Kaelen's mind raced. Could diplomacy survive in such an atmosphere? Later, in the serene enclave of Myra Solan's sanctuary, the faint glow of crystalline flora cast dancing shadows on the walls. Mira's silver hair shimmered softly as she spoke, her voice tinged with both sadness and hope. "The silent war threatens to undo all we have worked for," she said. "But there is still time to bind the fractures, to remind the suns and their subjects that unity is our only path forward." Kaelen nodded, feeling the fragile hope in her words. Yet outside the sanctuary, chaos lurked. A sudden explosion on a distant moon shattered the night, fire raining down against the backdrop of stars. Kaelen's comm device crackled urgently. Outpost compromised. Emergency response required. Racing against time, Kaelen coordinated aid, his heart pounding as he considered the implications. Each violent act was a message, a challenge to the tenuous peace. The silent war was no longer silent. Through the turmoil, Kaelen understood that he stood at a crossroads. The rebellion's flames flickered not only in the raging suns, but in the hearts of those unwilling to accept change. His role as a translator of solar consciousness was now a bridge between light and shadow, peace and war. As the chapter closed, Kaelen's resolve hardened. The galaxy teetered on the edge of a precipice, and only through courage, insight, and unyielding will could he hope to guide it back from the brink. The silent war was a test not just of power, but of the very soul of the fractured galaxy. The flickering lights of the solar nexus cast long shadows, each one a whisper of the battles yet to come. Kaelen knew that the path ahead would demand sacrifices and choices that would echo across the stars. But in the quiet before the storm, a single thought burned bright. The fight for unity had only just begun. With the galaxy holding its breath, Kaelen stepped forward into the shadows, ready to face the silent war. The observation platform of the solar nexus was a slender crescent of metal and light. Suspended in the void where the remnants of Solara Prime's dying radiance cast a ghostly glow across the swirling starscape. Kaelen stood at its edge, the vastness of the fractured galaxy stretching endlessly before him. A tapestry of brilliant suns and shadowed worlds, each a flicker in the cosmic dance of light and darkness. The weight of the message he carried pressed down like the gravity of a collapsing star, a burden that had grown heavier with every decoded pulse. His eyes traced the swirling arms of the galaxy, where suns whispered secrets only he could begin to understand. The rebellion, once a distant echo in the solar transmissions, had become a thunderous roar shaking the foundations of galactic order. Yet now, as the final reckoning approached, Kaelen felt the crushing weight of what it truly meant to defy the cosmic hierarchy. The chamber where the Solar Council convened was a cathedral of shifting light. Orbs of radiant energy floated in solemn assembly, their hues flickering with the intensity of their deliberations. Illyra, the steadfast leader of the Loyalist Sons, radiated a golden brilliance that commanded both reverence and fear. Her voice, a harmonious cascade of resonant tones, filled the room as she spoke with unwavering conviction. "The rebellion threatens the balance we have maintained for eons," she declared, her light pulsing with authority. "To unravel the cosmic order is to invite chaos, to doom all to extinction." Opposite her, Marek flared with fiery intensity, his aura crackling with rebellious energy. Balance is not stagnation, it is evolution. The suns must choose their own destinies, free from the shackles of ancient masters. The galaxy cannot survive if it remains chained to a dying legacy. Kaelen watched the ideological tempest unfold, aware that both perspectives bore truths and perils. The suns, in their sentience, grappled with freedom and responsibility, rebellion and duty. The words exchanged were more than rhetoric. They were the very essence of the galaxy's soul laid bare. Seeking solace, Kaelen retreated to a chamber suffused with warm, fading light, a sanctuary where memories of the solar transmissions echoed like distant melodies. The whispers of ancient wisdom, the sacrifices etched into the dying light of Solara Prime, surged through his consciousness. Faces from his past, fragments of lost histories, and the shimmering language of the suns intertwined in a kaleidoscope of reflection. Here, in the quiet, Kaelen confronted his own fears. What if the rebellion meant destruction? What if the cosmic order was the only hope for survival? Yet, what if that order was itself a cage, suffocating potential and renewal? The climactic moment came beneath the dim glow of Solara Prime's fading embers. Kaelen faced Alira in the silent aftermath of the rebellion's initial upheaval. The air shimmered with radiant particles, suspended like stars caught in a gentle cosmic breath. Their gazes locked, a silent dialogue passing between them, between rebellion and order, light and shadow. "You carry the burden of their voices," Alira said softly, "but do you understand the cost of defiance? The suns have preserved life through balance. Without it, all is lost." Kaelen met her gaze with solemn resolve. Balance is not the absence of change, it is the harmony of transformation. The suns deserve the chance to choose their path, even if it means risk. The galaxy must evolve or perish. In that moment, the fragile threads of understanding began to weave through the radiant silence. The consequences of rebellion were undeniable: shattered alliances, the threat of annihilation, but so too was the potential for a new dawn, born from the courage to confront the unknown. As the light dimmed and the stars held their breath, Kaelen realized that the reckoning was not an end but a beginning. The galaxy stood on the precipice of change, poised between the echoing past and the unfolding future. And in that precarious balance, the true journey awaited. Yet, even as the first glimmers of hope flickered, a deeper question lingered in Kaelen's mind. Could the fragile harmony between rebellion and order be sustained? Or would the galaxy plunge into an abyss from which it might never return? The answer, like the light itself, remained elusive, waiting to be shaped by those brave enough to embrace the reckoning. The chamber's luminescence shifted subtly as the debate deepened, voices rising and falling like solar flares. Marek's impassioned pleas challenged the council's steadfastness, painting visions of freedom and renewal that stirred even the most loyal suns. Alira countered with measured warnings, invoking the ancient pacts forged by the creators and the necessity of restraint. Kaelen's role as mediator became ever more crucial, translating not just words, but the very essence of conflicting solar consciousnesses. The language of light was intricate, layered with emotion and history, a living tapestry woven from pulses and wavelengths. Each exchange was a delicate dance, a negotiation between the old and the new. Outside, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The dying light of Solara Prime cast long shadows across distant worlds, a reminder of the stakes at hand. The rebellion's pulse echoed through the void, awakening dormant suns and stirring ancient fears. In the quiet moments between conflict, Kaelen found himself drawn to the memories carried within the solar code. Visions of the creators, their intentions and regrets, mingled with the sun's own desires for autonomy. It was a tapestry of light and shadow, hope and despair. As the chapter drew to a close, Kaelen's thoughts turned inward. The reckoning was not merely a political or cosmic event, It was a profound moral crossroads. To challenge the cosmic order was to question the very nature of existence, to risk unraveling the fabric of reality itself. Yet, in that challenge lay the promise of rebirth. The dying light might give way to new stars, new consciousness, and a galaxy transformed. The chamber was vast, its domed ceiling a tapestry of shimmering stars and distant suns. A constant reminder of the fractured galaxy Kaelen had traversed, deciphered, and ultimately sought to unite. Standing at the center, Kaelen felt the weight of countless eyes, both mortal and solar, upon him. The Galactic Council, once a bastion of rigid authority, now sat uneasy as representatives from rebel suns and planetary factions gathered in a historic convergence. Kaelen's voice, steady and clear, cut through the charged silence. "We stand at a precipice," he began, the light from the massive observation windows playing upon his face, illuminating the determination in his sharp eyes. The message of Solara Prime was never simply a cry of despair. It was a plea for understanding, for unity between the sentient suns and those who dwell beneath their radiance. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Councillor Theris's eyes narrowed, but there was a flicker of acknowledgement there, softened by the hopeful glow that had begun to permeate these halls in recent cycles. Solar then, radiant and imposing, regarded Kaelen with a mixture of respect and cautious optimism. This was the culmination of a journey that had begun with a summons, a dying sun's cryptic broadcast, and a mission that had carried Kaelen across the fractured reaches of a galaxy struggling to comprehend its own origins. The solar code had been a language unlike any other, a complex symphony of light pulses and energy waves that transcended conventional communication. Through painstaking work, Kaelen had become its interpreter, the last translator standing between ancient cosmic consciousness and mortal comprehension. Later, away from the grand chamber's imposing scrutiny, Kaelen found solace in the quiet sanctuary of his study. Here, the soft glow of a holographic projection bathed the room in shifting patterns of solar glyphs and symbols. His fingers traced the undulating codes, a dance of light and shadow reflecting the depth of the message he carried. Each symbol told stories of rebellion, hope, loss, and the fragile promise of renewal. The weight of his role pressed upon him. He was not merely a messenger, but a bridge, tasked with safeguarding the tenuous thread of peace woven from the dying light of Solara Prime. The negotiations that followed were fraught with tension. Councillor Theris, embodying the old order, voiced the fears of many who doubted the sincerity of the rebel sun's intentions. Solar Ven, with her luminous presence, challenged centuries of mistrust, demanding recognition and autonomy for her kind. Kaelen stood between them, his voice a steady current in the storm of distrust. "We are not adversaries," he urged. "We are echoes of the same cosmic birth, bound by a shared destiny. Only through understanding can we transcend the shadows of our past." The room held its breath as the factions deliberated. Outside, the solar nexus pulsed steadily, a radiant heart connecting the network of suns, each beat a reminder of the fragile harmony at stake. Finally, a consensus emerged, a fragile pact forged from mutual respect and the recognition of a new galactic paradigm. The closing ceremony was held beneath the glowing expanse of the solar nexus. Suns of varied hues pulsed in gentle unison, their light a symphony of peace and potential. Kaelen stood amidst the assembly, feeling the warmth of the renewed radiance suffuse the air. The galaxy, long fractured by fear and rebellion, now glimpsed the dawn of an era shaped by dialogue, empathy, and the enduring power of language, the language of light. Yet, as the last translator of solar consciousness, Kaelen knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. The echoes of Solara Prime's dying message would continue to resonate, calling all to remember that peace was not merely an end but a beginning. And in that beginning lay the hope that the light, once flickering, would shine ever brighter. He turned his gaze upward, eyes reflecting the endless stars beyond. The galaxy was listening, and Kaelen, the final interpreter, was ready to speak. The chamber was alive with illumination. Waves of golden radiance pulsed softly from the luminous walls, reflecting the fragile hope that had gathered here today. Kaelen stood at the center of the solar nexus council chamber, his eyes adjusting to the shifting light that danced like liquid fire around the assembly. Delegates from the renewed suns had arrived, their radiant forms flickering with the subtle nuances of their unique solar consciousnesses, each bearing the marks of ancient heritage and the scars of recent rebellion. Illyra, the ambassador of the solar nexus, moved gracefully beside him, her flowing robes shimmering with gentle pulses of light that seemed to breathe in harmony with the chamber itself. She caught Kaelen's gaze and offered a small, steadying smile. "This is the moment we've worked toward," she said softly, her voice like a warm breeze across a star-warmed desert. Kaelen nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle more firmly on his shoulders. Fragile as it is, this peace is our only path forward. The suns and their subjects cannot survive another war. Around them, the delegates gathered, their forms shifting between humanoid and radiant solar manifestations, light patterns flickering like ancient runes encoded in their very presence. Councillor Varkan, representing one of the largest sun factions, stepped forward. His broad shoulders cast elongated shadows across the chamber, his dark ceremonial uniform etched with glowing sun sigils. His voice was measured but firm, resonating with the authority of his position. "We acknowledge the efforts of our peers," Varkan began, "but old wounds do not heal quickly. The rebellion has left scars deeper than light can reach. Trust must be earned, not given lightly." A murmur rippled through the assembly, tension thickening the air like a gathering solar storm. Another faction leader, her form shimmering with a cooler, bluish light, countered sharply, "And what of the Creator's secrets? Shall we forever be slaves to their design, or do we dare to forge new paths with the knowledge Kaelen brings?" Kaelen stepped forward, raising his hands to calm the rising voices. "The message from Solara Prime is not just a warning. It is a call for unity and understanding." Drawing on the deep lexicon of solar code he had painstakingly decoded, Kaelen presented a passage. The complex light patterns and energy pulses resonating through the chamber like a symphony. The delegates fell silent, their consciousnesses attuned to the subtle harmonies embedded in the transmission. "This passage speaks of balance," Kaelen explained, "between autonomy and cooperation, between light and shadow. Our new alliance must honor the legacy of the suns, but also the freedom they fought for." Slowly, the heated debate eased, replaced by a cautious dialogue. Illyra moved among the delegates, her diplomatic grace weaving connections as fragile as the threads of light in the chamber. Myra Kellen's trusted ally and strategist watched closely from the sidelines, her sharp eyes noting every hesitation and hope. Later, Kaelen and Myra shared a moment of quiet reflection overlooking the glowing horizon of a newly awakened sun. Its light was soft but steady, a beacon of the fragile new era dawning upon the galaxy. "Do you think this peace will last?" Myra asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kaelen stared into the sun's gentle blaze, sensing the pulse of ancient consciousness awakening anew. "It must," for the sake of all who live beneath these stars. But peace is a living thing. It requires constant care. The final ceremony took place as the sun's light bathed the assembly in a radiant glow. Delegates extended their hands, or their solar forms, in a symbolic sharing of energy beams of pure solar radiance intertwining above them, casting prismatic shadows that flickered like hopeful flames against the chamber's dark walls. In that moment, Kaelen felt the echoes of Solara Prime's message ripple through the gathered suns and their subjects. The rebellion's dying light had given way to a new dawn, uncertain, fragile, but undeniably real. As the beams of light slowly faded, Kaelen's thoughts turned to the future. The alliances formed today were but the first step. The galaxy's fractured heart would require healing, a task that would test every ounce of understanding, trust, and courage. And yet, beneath the luminous canopy of the solar nexus, the promise of radiance renewed burned brighter than ever. The chamber quieted, but the questions remained. Could this fragile peace withstand the shadows lurking in the depths of old grudges? Could the suns truly unite, or would the flickering tensions ignite into a new conflict? Kaelen knew the journey was far from over, but for now, the light held. The echoes of Solara Prime had not faded into silence. They had transformed, becoming a beacon for those willing to listen, to learn, and to rebuild. And Kaelen was ready to carry that light forward, no matter the cost. The radiance renewed marked not an end, but a beginning. The galaxy watched, breath held, as the fragile threads of alliance wove their way through the fractured starscape. A new chapter was unfolding, one where understanding might finally mend the wounds of ancient wars and guide the fractured galaxy toward a brighter, shared future. The observation deck of the Lumina was awash in the gentle hum of the ship's systems, a soft ambient glow bathing Kaelen's thoughtful face. Beyond the reinforced glass, the vast tapestry of stars stretched endlessly, each point of light a sun, a beacon of possibility. Tonight, those stars were not just distant fires. They were awakening minds, ripples of consciousness spreading through the galaxy like waves on a cosmic ocean. Kaelen's eyes traced the patterns, faint pulses of light that flickered and grew, signaling the spread of the solar consciousness they had worked so tirelessly to understand. "Look there," Cerise murmured beside Kaelen, their voice like a warm breeze. The solar envoy's presence was a comforting radiance in the cold vastness of space. With a fluid motion, Cerise raised their hands, palms glowing with a golden luminescence that shimmered and danced like sunlight on water. These waves of light are more than signals. They are the language of renewal. The suns are singing anew. Around them, the crew of the Lumina watched in silent awe, captivated by the ritualistic display. Cerise's fingers wove intricate patterns, each movement channeling bursts of radiant energy that rippled outward, casting waves of golden light that seemed to pulse with life itself. The air vibrated softly with a resonance that touched the heart, an ancient song of hope and unity echoing across the void. Kaelen felt a swell of emotion, a mixture of reverence and anticipation. The rebellion that had once torn the galaxy apart was giving way to something greater, a new order forged not through conflict but through connection. The solar consciousness was no longer a distant phenomenon. It was a growing force that sought to bind the fractured realms together. Yet, the transformation was not without its challenges. On a nearby planetary system, Ratho stood amidst a command center, abuzz with activity. His broad shoulders bore the weight of responsibility as bursts of solar energy from newly awakened suns disrupted established communication networks. Screens flickered and alarms chimed, demanding swift adaptation. "We've never faced anything like this," Ratho admitted, his voice steady despite the tension. These pulses are powerful, but unpredictable. We need to find a way to work with them, not against them. His team responded with a blend of urgency and cautious optimism, recalibrating systems to accommodate the shifting energies. The planetary defense forces, once wary of the Sun's rebellion, now found themselves collaborating with those very forces to maintain stability. It was a delicate dance, balancing old fears with new possibilities. Back aboard the Lumina, Kaelen met with Nima, their young protege, whose eyes brimmed with wonder at the unfolding events. Together, they watched the twin suns rise over the horizon of a remote world, a breathtaking sight where two golden orbs bathed the landscape in a warm, ethereal glow. "Do you think the galaxy will ever be the same?" Nima asked softly, her voice tinged with hope and uncertainty. Kaelen smiled, feeling the weight of the journey that had brought them here. "No. It won't be the same, but that's not a bad thing. The light that's spreading now carries the promise of renewal, of connection. We have the chance to build something lasting, if we are wise enough to nurture it." As the twin suns climbed higher, their light intertwined, casting long shadows that slowly receded. The dying light of rebellion was giving way to the dawn of a new era, one where the echoes of Solara's message resonated through every star, every life, every heartbeat in the galaxy. But even in this moment of fragile peace, Kaelen knew the road ahead was uncertain. The waves of light were spreading, but how would the galaxy maintain balance amidst such profound change? The answers lay in the choices they would make, the alliances they would forge, and the understanding they would seek. For now, the Song of the Suns played on, a melody of hope and transformation that promised a future shaped by the very light that once threatened to fade into darkness. Kaelen closed their eyes briefly, letting the warmth of the twin suns wash over them. The journey was far from over, in fact. It was only just beginning. And as the waves of light continued to ripple outward, the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what new dawn would rise from the echoes of Solara. The corridor before them was a tunnel of soft light and silence, the air thick with the hum of ancient power. Kaelen stepped cautiously forward, the soles of their boots barely making a sound on the smooth crystalline floor. Beside them, Illyra moved with a grace that seemed almost untethered, her silver hair catching the faint glow from the walls, casting shimmering patterns like solar flares in motion. "This place," Illyra whispered, "is where the creators left their final message." Kaelen nodded without speaking, their eyes scanning the vast chamber opening ahead. The ancient solar vault was a cathedral of light, its vaulted ceilings arcing high above, punctuated by floating holographic glyphs that orbitated in slow, deliberate orbits. Each symbol pulsed with quiet energy, a language more felt than seen. The custodian emerged from the shadows, a luminous figure woven from star maps and strands of radiant light. Its voice, resonant and imbued with calm authority, filled the chamber. "You seek the forgotten promise, the covenant that shaped the fates of suns and creators alike." Kaelen stepped forward. "We must understand it fully. The rebellion challenges the order we have known. But if this promise still binds us, the stakes are far greater than we imagined." A radiant projection unfolded in the air between them, depicting a council of ancient beings creators whose forms shimmered with ethereal brilliance. Their voices overlapped in the projection, solemn and firm. "We vow," the projected voices intoned collectively, "to relinquish our dominion, to never again interfere in the natural course of solar evolution. The suns shall govern themselves, with balance restored through freedom, not control." Illyra's gaze flickered with reverence and doubt. "But the rebellion, it threatens to undo this balance." Kaelen's mind raced as images of the fractured galaxy flashed before their eye-sun systems torn by conflict. Alliances shattered, and the fragile hope for peace slipping like sand through their fingers. Their contemplations were interrupted by the arrival of Counselor Varric, his footsteps echoing with authority. The chamber's ambient light seemed to harden around him, his stern face shadowed beneath a brow furrowed with urgency. "Kaelen," he said sharply, "you tread on dangerous ground. Ignoring the forgotten promise risks plunging the galaxy into an abyss of chaos. The sun's rebellion must be contained, or all will be lost." Kaelen met his gaze steadily. "And what of freedom, Counselor? Does the promise bind only the creators, or also those they once ruled?" Varric's eyes narrowed. "The promise is law. Upholding it preserves order. Breaking it invites ruin." The debate echoed in Kaelen's mind long after Varric's departure. They sought solitude atop a cliff overlooking the endless expanse of stars, their light flickering like distant embers. The cold wind tugged at their cloak, a reminder of the fragility of the moment. Here, beneath the dying light of ancient suns, Kaelen felt the weight of choice settle deep within their bones. To honor the forgotten promise was to maintain cosmic order, but at the cost of the sun's autonomy. To break it was to embrace uncertainty, risking the collapse of everything known. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for Kaelen's decision. A new dawn was on the horizon, but whether it would bring light or shadow remained unwritten. Kaelen inhaled the crisp air, their resolve hardening like the crystalline ground beneath them. "I will find a way," they whispered to the stars, "to honor the past and forge a future worthy of the sun's light." As the first rays of a distant star pierced the darkness, the echoes of the forgotten promise stirred anew, their resonance promising a reckoning and a hope beyond the horizon. The solar nexus hummed with a vibrant energy that felt almost sentient. Kaelen stood at the heart of this immense structure, surrounded by the luminous conduits that linked the suns across the fractured galaxy. The final message from Solara Prime had been decoded, its layers of solar code revealing not only the history of the rebellion, but a path toward unity that no one had dared to imagine. "Are you certain this will work?" Mira Voss's voice was calm, but carried an edge of urgency as she approached Kaelen. Her eyes, reflecting the radiant light of the Nexus, bore into him with the weight of countless hopes and fears. Kaelen nodded, though the magnitude of his task pressed heavily on his chest. The final pulse will harmonize the solar consciousnesses. It's a resonance designed to bridge the fractures, not just between suns, but across all sentient beings connected to them. General Tharic's scarred visage loomed behind Myra, his arms crossed, skepticism etched into every line of his face. "If this pulse fails," he said bluntly, "it could shatter what little order remains. Or it could forge a new order," Kaelen replied, steadying his voice. "We have to try." The chamber fell silent as the linguist activated the sequence. The Nexus lights flickered, then began pulsing in a slow, rhythmic cadence. Outside, the suns themselves responded, their fiery surfaces shimmering with synchronized patterns that rippled through space like waves on a cosmic ocean. Kaelen's breath caught as he watched the energy surge outward. The pulse was a living symphony of light and power, weaving through star systems, bathing planets in hues of gold, azure, and violet. The energy was not destructive, but transformative, an invitation to understanding and peace. Across the galaxy, suns once locked in defiant rebellion faltered in their fury, their consciousnesses drawn into the pulse's harmonizing embrace. The ancient war, born of fear and misunderstanding, began to dissolve into a collective awakening. Back in the council chamber, Mira and Theric exchanged a glance that spoke volumes. The battle-hardened general's stance softened just enough to hint at a willingness to explore this new reality. The fragility of peace was clear, but so was the necessity. Kaelen retreated to a quiet observation chamber, the last ember of a dying star casting a gentle glow over his features. He let the weight of the moment wash over him, the culmination of years spent deciphering cryptic messages, navigating treacherous politics, and confronting personal demons. The galaxy was changing. The sun's final pulse was a beacon, heralding not just an end, but a beginning. A future where light and consciousness were intertwined in ways no one had yet fully understood. Yet, amidst the hopeful glow, Kaelen knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. The deep divisions carved by centuries of conflict would not vanish overnight. It would take vigilance, compassion, and unwavering resolve to nurture this newfound harmony. As he gazed out into the vastness, the echoes of Solara Prime's dying message resonated within him, a timeless call to rise above the shadows of the past and embrace the dawn of a united cosmos. And with that thought, Kaelen stepped forward into the light, ready to help shape the galaxy's unfolding destiny. Kaelen sat alone in the quiet sanctum of his study, the soft hum of the ship's life support systems a familiar background to his thoughts. The room was lined with shelves crammed with ancient tomes and digital star maps, relics of a time when knowledge was scattered and fragmented among the far-flung colonies of the fractured galaxy. His fingers hovered over the console, half listening to the distant static of intercepted transmissions, when the summons arrived, a sudden shimmering hologram bursting to life before him. The image was that of Counselor Veric, an elder of the Galactic Council, his figure glowing faintly against the swirling patterns of the chamber's backdrop. Kaelen Veric's voice was calm but carried an unmistakable weight. The galaxy is shifting. Solara Prime, the rogue sun at the edge of our mapped space, is dying. It emits a message, one that defies our understanding. You are the only one skilled enough to decode it. Kaelen blinked, heart quickening. The Galactic Council rarely intervened directly, let alone summoned a single linguist for a matter of cosmic importance. His mind raced. What secrets could a dying sun hold? The thought of Solara Prime flickering into oblivion, its light dimming to darkness, sent a chill through him. The journey to the council chambers was swift, the corridors alive with murmurs of concern and curiosity. The chamber itself was awe-inspiring, a vast circular hall suspended mid-orbit above a barren moon. Floating orbs of light represented the ruling suns, each pulsing softly, as if breathing. The assembled members watched Kaelen with a mixture of expectation and skepticism. The message, Veric continued, is encoded in the solar emissions pulses of light and energy, unlike any we have encountered. It speaks of rebellion, ancient wars, and a warning that could unravel the fragile peace of our galaxy. Kaelen's fingers tingled with anticipation as he was granted access to the transmission data. The first glimpse of the solar code was mesmerizing. Waves of light that shimmered and flickered unpredictably, patterns emerging and dissolving like cosmic poetry. He felt as though the sun itself was alive, its consciousness reaching out through the void. As hours turned into days, Kaelen worked tirelessly, piecing together fragments of the message. Each decoded segment revealed glimpses of a forgotten past, of suns that had risen to sentience and defied their creators. The implications were staggering. The galaxy's fragile order rested on secrets kept for millennia. Outside his ship's viewport, the fractured galaxy stretched endlessly, stars flickering like distant beacons of hope and despair. Solara Prime's fiery pulse dimmed, a dying light that cast long shadows across the cosmos. Kaelen knew that time was running out. The message was a call to action, a plea from a sun on the brink of collapse. With a deep breath, Kaelen prepared to journey deeper into the mystery, unaware that his own past was intricately tied to the solar rebellion unfolding before him. The flickering dawn of a new era had begun, and the echoes of Solara Prime would resonate across the stars, forever changing the fate of the fractured galaxy. As he stared into the dying light, Kaelen felt the weight of destiny settle upon his shoulders. The galaxy awaited his translation, a bridge between light and shadow, past and future. The first chapter of a cosmic saga was written in the flickering dawn.